Perfectly timed moments caught on camera. This guy was doing flips on an outside gymnastics bar when all of a sudden it snapped at just the right time to avoid him from getting hurt. A guinea pig and its owner have the exact same reaction to thunder. This guy grabs a hat from his friend's head and throws it into the crowd where it lands perfectly on a stranger's head. This guy was able to summon lightning with his fist. And finally, these two medics are dressed identical and perfectly in sync. 5 more people who got instant karma. This lady not only gets way too close to this horse, but actually grabs the reins.
Get off the bed!
When this car stops in the middle of a crosswalk, these pedestrians refuse to walk in the road. This man is about to learn the dangers of mixing a bald head with a toilet plunger. This shoplifter takes his sweet time robbing a store, then seems surprised when the police meet him at the entrance. Finally, when this guy tries to interrupt a wedding ceremony, he gets exactly what he deserves.
Important day of your life.
5 more survival myths debunked. If you're lost in the wilderness, finding food should not be your first priority because humans could survive up to 6 weeks without food. The liquid in a cactus will probably not save you from dying of thirst. Most of the time, it will make you vomit, causing you to be even more dehydrated. The chemicals in a match head are very susceptible to moisture, so don't get your matches wet because after they dry, they won't work. Building a fire in a cave will definitely keep you warm, but the heat will also cause the rocks to expand and risk a potential cave-in. Finally, eating snow for hydration can lower your body temperature, which can be dangerous if you're already stuck in low-temperatured weather. People who celebrated too early. At the 2006 Winter Olympics, American snowboarder Lindsay Jacobellis was about to bring home a gold medal, but on the second to last jump, she attempted a celebratory method grab and fell, which costed her big.
Exactly.
After a 116-yard return, this football player started to celebrate before getting the touchdown, and he was tackled just 1 yard short of the end zone.
He crossed the goal line. That knee is down before the ball crosses the plane.
This poker player couldn't contain his excitement over a good hand, but sadly, it wasn't good enough. At the 2017 Academy Awards, the Best Picture Oscar went to La La Land. It wasn't until multiple people had already made their acceptance speeches that the award show's producers revealed that there had been a mistake, and the real winner was the film called Moonlight.
Heartbreaking to see when they realized that they didn't actually win an Oscar, and it was a mix-up.
5 times kids outsmarted their teachers. Peter took the word expand a little too literal. This student's sentimental approach didn't impress the teacher. You've got to give this kid credit for their confidence. When they were asked to explain how they got the answer, they said because their brain is always right. I think this answer for the opposite of pro deserves at least half a mark. And finally, this kid made a very convincing attempt at writing his mom's signature. 5 rare diseases you've never heard of. Alice in Wonderland syndrome, or Todd syndrome, causes people to see objects larger or smaller than they actually are. It's believed to be associated with migraines and brain tumors. Human werewolf syndrome is a condition where a person experiences excessive growth of dark, thick hair around their whole body. A water allergy is an extremely rare condition where a person's turned red and itchy when exposed to water. People with this allergy can also have reactions to snow, sweat, and rain. Foreign accent syndrome is caused by a misalignment of the tongue, often from a brain injury. The symptom is a person speaking in a different accent from their regular one. Finally, Stone Man disease is an extremely rare disease that causes a person's muscle tissue to turn to bone. Actors who wore painful prosthetics during filming. Skarsgård played Bootstamp's Bill Turner in the original Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy, a character who has lived at the bottom of the ocean for years. The role required 4 hours of prosthetics makeup per day, but as Bill kept developing rashes from the latex, his filming days were cut down to 3 times a week. Jennifer Lawrence played Mystic in the 2009 reboot of X-Men First Class. The role required her to have no clothes on and be covered in blue paint. She also had to wear prosthetics with elaborate blue scale design and fake contact lenses, both of which were painful and restrictive. And finally, Jim Carrey went through absolute torture to play the Grinch in How the Grinch Stole Christmas movie. He had to go through 8 hours of makeup for 92 days of shooting. Jim experienced such intense claustrophobia idea while in the costume that the production team brought in someone from the CIA to help him relax while they were filming. 5 of the greatest underdog sports stories of all time. Mark Edmondson was working as a window washer just weeks before he won the Australian Open in 1967. Senegal competed in the World Cup for the first time in 2002, and they were miraculously able to defeat the reigning champs, which was France, in the opening match. In 2009, 20-year-old Juan Martin beat the #1 seed Roger Federer to win the US Open. This underdog never won another major title again. In the 1980 Winter Olympics, the US men's hockey team, which was full of amateurs, pulled off a stunning upset against the unstoppable Russian team in an event dubbed the Miracle on Ice. Finally, in 1990, Buster Douglas shocked the world when he KO'd heavyweight champion Mike Tyson, who was favored to beat him 50-1. 5 terrifying moments caught on GoPro. These teens were walking down a dark train tunnel when all of a sudden one of them sees a train. They then race out of the tunnel and just barely avoid getting hit. This man is on a solo bike trip in South Africa when he's all of a sudden robbed at gunpoint by 3 people. The man lost his bike, cell phone, and car keys, but managed to keep his GoPro. This footage shows the moment that 2 skydiving planes collide and burst into flames. All of the passengers, including the pilots, had to jump off the plane to safety. This diver was spearfishing underwater when all of a sudden he sees a great white shark. Luckily, he was able to defend himself by using the spear. Finally, this footage captures a terrifying moment that a French skier falls 15 meters into a hidden crevice, but luckily his friends were able to rescue him.
Hey, I'm just, I'm gonna need quite a lot of help to get out.
5 times quick reflexes saved the day. This dad risked his own life to run out in front of a car to save his daughter. This little girl is helping her parents in the kitchen when the urge to sneeze kicks in. Luckily, dad is there with his hand to protect the food. This bus driver's quick reaction saves a kid from walking in front of a car.
That was a good grab.
A person in the crowd steps in at the last moment to save this guy doing stunts from landing on a rock. Finally, this birthday party was about to be ruined, but this absolute hero stepped in to save the day. 5 wholesome moments caught on camera. This elderly woman drops off flowers to her neighbors, rings the doorbell, then trots off before they answer the door. This kid takes his big brother responsibilities very seriously, as he guides his brother through some deep breathing to calm him down. This old man is caught on camera placing bananas on his neighbor's tree that didn't grow any fruits that season. This man is happily living his best Disney princess life in the park. And finally, even though this stray dog is taking up 2 seats, the people on the train decided he needs the rest and left him alone. Animals who helped other animals. This parrot hopped on a stove to steal some spaghetti and decides to share some with his husky friend. This small dog falls into a pool while no one is home and struggles to get out. A bigger dog follows her around the pool, trying several times to help her out before he's finally able to rescue her. A stray cat helps out a monkey by letting him hitch a ride. A Labrador saves a baby deer from drowning and returns it to shore safely.
Come on.
And finally, this mother hen doesn't mess around when it comes to her babies, and she amazingly fights off a king cobra. Classic movie moments that were actually improvised. Dustin Hoffman claims that he actually improvised the famous line, "I'm walking here," from Midnight Cowboy when a taxi drove through the scene.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
In Django Unchained, Leonardo DiCaprio accidentally sliced his hand open on a glass, but he continued with the scene, and that's actually what they used in the movie.
Hey! Lay your palms flat on that tabletop! If you lift those palms off that turtle shell tabletop, Mr. Pooch is gonna let loose with both.
In Dumb and Dumber, Jim Carrey improvised the most annoying sound in the world. You can see his partner in the scene, Jeff Daniels, break out laughing.
Hey, wanna hear the most annoying sound in the world?
And finally, in the film Taxi Driver, the script called for Robert De Niro's character to talk to himself in the mirror. This led him to improvise the famous "You talking to me" monologue.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
This man shot someone to protect his chicken business. In the 1930s, Harlan Sanders worked as a manager at a Shell gas station in Kentucky. And to boost this business, he decided to start cooking food for travelers. His best seller was fried chicken. He decided to start painting signs all around town advertising his small kitchen. But when Matt Stewart, who's a competitor that also works at a gas station called Standard Oil, sees these signs, got upset because his competitor is using chicken to sell more oil. So he decided to paint over the signs with a thick tar-like substance. But when Sanders and his Shell employees catch him doing this, they decide to confront him. During this confrontation, Matt Stewart pulled out a gun and fired at them, killing one of the Shell employees. Sanders fired back, hitting Stewart in the shoulder. Stewart was charged with murder and sentenced to several years in prison. But Sanders got off free and went back to selling his chicken. Kevin Bacon helped find a missing pig called Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon, the pig, escaped from his home in Pennsylvania by digging under the fence in his enclosure. When his owner was unable to locate him, the whole community got together to try and find him. But he was too quick to be captured. To spread news and track Kevin Bacon's sightings, the owner set up a Facebook page called Bring Kevin Bacon Home. The page then caught the attention of the actor, Kevin Bacon, who shared it with his followers on Instagram's new app called Threads. The pig remained on the loose for 2 weeks until they left out a sticky bun that was laced with pet-safe Benadryl, which would make him less skittish when they approached him. After eating it, Kevin walked right back home into his pen. The owners say the actor Kevin Bacon is welcome to visit him anytime. South Korea puts 90% of food waste to good use. Every year, the human population generates 1.4 billion tons of food waste. The majority of that waste ends up in landfills, except in South Korea, which has the most advanced food waste disposal infrastructure in the world. South Korean cuisine tends to result in more food waste because of the tradition for dozens of side dishes. And because the country has lots of mountains, there isn't much space for landfills. So in 1995, South Korea banned food scraps from going into landfills. And now, 90% of that waste gets turned into animal food, fertilizer, and fuel used to heat thousands of houses. Take this 1-minute smile test. To start, force your face into a smile. Now hold it there until I tell you to stop. I'm pretty sure we all understand that when we feel happy, we smile. But research shows that the opposite is also true, meaning that when you force yourself to smile, you feel happier. The same principle applies to how you do other things in life. For example, if you talk with enthusiasm or walk with a pep in your step, you might become a more happier person. Okay, you can stop smiling now. But how do you feel? Let me know in the comments down below. Things that movies always get wrong. Despite what the movies will have you believe, gun silencers don't actually make gunshots silent. They're meant to minimize the sound to prevent hearing damage. But guns with silencers are still really loud. Next up, we have crawling through air vents. Most air vents are way too small for a person to fit through, and even if they could fit through, the thin metal sheet isn't strong enough to hold you up. Next up, we have waking up from a coma. It's uncommon for someone to wake up from a coma like they're waking up from a nap. Coma patients are often very confused, and they need several days to become fully aware after waking up. Finally, we have explosions. Most movies don't account for the shockwave that explosions make. If you get hit by a shockwave, it'll send you flying through the air and you'll get really hurt. This dog was lost in an airport for 3 weeks. Earlier this year, Paula Rodriguez was traveling from her home in the Dominican Republic to San Francisco for a vacation. But when her visa was canceled, she had to stay the night at a detention center near the Atlanta airport before taking a flight home the next day. Dogs aren't allowed in the detention center, so Delta Airlines offered to take care of her puppy overnight. But the next day, when she went to board the flight, her dog was missing, and the border enforcement officers made her fly home without the dog. 2 days later, she found out that her dog had escaped the carrier while being transported and took off running on the tarmac. Since she was so far away, a volunteer animal recovery specialist named Robin had heard about the story and decided to step in and create a Facebook page to post flyers about in the area. When the dog was spotted by several employees, the volunteer rushed to the airport. She was able to track down the dog under a cargo rack and rescued her. So after 3 weeks of the dog living at the airport, she was returned home. This man has saved 2.4 million lives by donating his blood. James James Harrison is an 81-year-old man living in Australia. When Harrison was 14 years old, he underwent major chest surgery and depended on blood donations to survive. So after the surgery, he decided to start donating his own blood when he was 18. Harrison started donating in 1954, and after the first few, doctors discovered that his blood contained rare antibodies that could help treat babies with certain diseases. So Harrison committed to being a regular donor, and over the next 57 years, he donated blood plasma every few weeks, which amounted to 1,173 donations in total. According to the Australian Red Cross, Harrison's donations saved the lives of 2.4 million babies. In 2018, he turned 81, and in compliance with Australian policy, he had to retire from plasma donation. But Harrison is still known as the man with the golden arm. Kid cartoons that were banned from TV. In an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants called Midlife Crustacean, it has Mr. Krabs engaging in a panty raid. The episode didn't have any negative feedback when it first aired, but years later, it was pulled from all streaming services. In a 1998 episode of Dexter's Laboratory, Dexter creates rude clones of his sister. Even though the curse words were bleeped out, the episode was still pulled from the air. In an episode of Peppa Pig, Peppa was scared about playing with a friendly spider, so her dad assured her that the spider was harmless. And while many spiders are harmless, there's a lot of spiders in Australia that aren't so harmless, so they refused to air the episode. In a 2008 episode of Arthur, one of the characters is inspired to build bike lanes after watching a Lance Armstrong race. Armstrong is featured in the episode, but after his drug use scandal, it was later pulled from the air in the US. Finally, in one segment of Tiny Toon Adventures called One Beer, Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig, and Daffy Duck find and share one beer. The episode was then banned for 10 years until it was released on DVD. Are you a good liar? Well, take this test to find out. This is an exercise designed by Professor Richard Wiseman of the University of Hertfordshire. Start by extending your pointer finger on your dominant hand. Now, take 5 seconds to draw a capital Q on your forehead with your finger. If you drew your Q with the tail pointing on the left side of your forehead, that means you drew it so the people facing you could read it, which means you're more aware of how people see you, you like attention, and according to Professor Wiseman, you're a good liar. If you drew the Q with the tail on the right side of your head, that means you drew it so you yourself could read it. So you tend to be more introverted and bad at lying. Or you're like me and you just drew a circle and randomly put it on one side because you knew a Q has a tail and you didn't care about who's looking at you or who you're looking at. Yeah. Did you know bananas are going extinct? Currently, the most common and available type of banana on the market is Cavendish. But this wasn't always the case. Up until the 1960s, a different type of banana called the Gros Michel was in stores. But a fungus called Panama disease destroyed thousands of banana crops around the world, which eventually caused the Gros Michel banana to go extinct. It was then replaced with a more disease-resistant banana, which is the Cavendish. Now, 60 years later, the fungus is back and threatening to repeat history. Due to the lack of genetic diversity in Cavendish bananas, they're not as resistant to fungus like they once were. And the fungus has also evolved to be immune to most pesticides. One expert estimates that Panama disease could reduce banana production by 80 to 85% each year, which could eventually lead to extinction, or at very least, cost you a lot more at the grocery store. Japanese golfers have hole-in-one insurance. To get a hole-in-one, it might seem very rare and lucky to you, but in Japan, many golfers would disagree. At golf courses around the world, it's a tradition for whoever sinks a hole-in-one, they buy the rest of the golfers a round of drinks. But in Japan, the expectations are way higher. The golfers are supposed to spend thousands of dollars on food, drinks, and presents for their friends to celebrate. So the solution is hole-in-one insurance. In the 1980s, golf insurance firms started to pop up. They offered yearly policies to cover the expenses of a hole-in-one party. Today, an average policy costs around $65 USD per year. And if you get a hole-in-one, you get $3,500 to spend on the party. It's estimated that 4 million Japanese golfers, or 30% of amateur golfers, are covered. The strangest Guinness World Records you've never heard of. The world's strangest diet belongs to a Frenchman who throughout his life ate a total of 18 bicycles, 15 grocery carts, 7 TVs, 6 chandeliers, 2 beds, a pair of skis, and a computer. The world's longest noodle was made in a restaurant in China and measured over 3,000 meters in length. A lab and research employee for Dr. Scholl's holds a record for the most armpits and feet sniffed. In 2019, the fastest time to push an orange 1 mile with their nose went to Arita Furman, who completed it in 22 minutes and 41 seconds. Finally, the longest attack of hiccups belongs to Charles Osborne, who got the hiccups in 1922 and had them for 68 years until the day he died. This woman won the lottery 4 times. Her name is Joanne R. Ginther, and she is originally from Texas. In 1993, Ginther won her first lottery and a prize of $5.4 million. She won the lottery again in 2006, and then again in 2010, bringing her total lottery winnings to $20.4 million. One mathematician estimated that the odds of hitting 4 big wins were 1 in 18 septillion. So how could this happen? Is she the luckiest woman alive? Probably, but it's more likely that there is some kind of scam involved. Some investigation revealed that Ginther was a mathematics professor who specialized in statistics. And most people who study the case agree that the odds are just too unlikely to be a coincidence. But for now, Ginther enjoys her lottery winnings in Las Vegas and keeps a low profile. These are some of the biggest mistakes in fast food history. In 2015, Burger King offered a limited edition Halloween Whopper with a black burger bun. The reviews for the burger were actually pretty good, but it turns out that the food dye in the bun had one unfortunate consequence. It caused customers to have bright green poop. Chipotle's first attempt at queso was a huge failure. Customers complained that it was watery and flavorless, and the negative press caused Chipotle's stock to drop. Fortunately, Chipotle dropped the old queso for a better one. In the 1980s, McDonald's rolled out the McSpaghetti, but customers had no interest in eating pizza and spaghetti from a burger place, so McDonald's discontinued the item. Finally, we have Taco Bell's seafood salad. Because of the success from McDonald's Filet-O-Fish, lots of fast food chains wanted to try seafood as well, but Taco Bell's crab, shrimp, and whitefish salad was a huge flop, and it was removed from the menu after several reports of food poisoning. The Apollo 13 space mission was supposed to be another boring mission to the moon, but by the end, the whole world was watching. So, in 1969, the astronauts of Apollo 11 completed the first mission to the moon. 500 million people watched on TV and history was made. But only a year later, when it came time for Apollo 13, the hype had died way down. There was a live telecast of the journey, but not a single one of the major networks broadcasted it. At one point, someone from Mission Control actually said, "We're bored to tears down here." But then, when Apollo 13 was 4/5 of the way to the moon, a damaged oxygen tank exploded and ripped a hole in the spacecraft. The 3 astronauts on board were in a fight for survival, and the media quickly picked up the story. When the men re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, 40 million Americans and countless people from around the world were watching. Against all odds, the men made it back safely, and what began as a boring mission ends as one of the most captivating real-life stories of all time. This man is spending 100 days underwater. Joseph Deturri, or Dr. Deep Sea, is a former US Navy diver who's been living underwater since March 1st. He plans to stay in a small shelter 22 feet below sea level for 100 days, breaking the previous world record, which was 73 days. But his real goal is to collect data and get people excited for scientific research. His underwater pod features a small kitchen, a living room kitchen, and small bunks for sleeping. He communicates to the outside world using his Instagram page. He can receive visitors and also plans to host a class field trip. But there are also many challenges. He has zero access to sunlight, and not to mention the bone-crushing pressure of the sea. Do you think Dr. Deep Sea will make it 100 days?
5 advertising tricks they don't want you to know. In commercials, they place cardboard in between each pancake to make them look better. And because syrup absorbs quickly, they use engine oil. Ice cream melts quickly under hot studio lights, so instead they use colored mashed potatoes. In commercials for milk, coffee, and beer, they add a liquid soap. It creates a stable foam that looks more appealing. Unlike whipped cream, shaving cream doesn't melt, so they use it on desserts in commercials and movies. Finally, cereal quickly soaks into milk and sinks to the bottom, so they replace the milk with glue so the cereal stays on top and doesn't get soggy.
3 things you didn't know about Stranger Things Season 4, but I just want to give you guys a spoiler alert. You may have thought that Vecna was created using visual effects, but the team wanted to make him look as close to 100% as possible without adding any effects after. They glued over 2,000 pieces to his skin, which took 7 hours to apply every time. The reason they did this is because it gave him more movement than a rubber suit would have. As you probably know, Eleven had a shaved head in Season 1, but this time she didn't really want to shave her head again. So for all the flashback scenes, they put on a wig which took 1 hour to apply. Billy was back for just 1 scene in this season, but because of travel restrictions during this time, he wasn't able to be there in person. So what he had to do was film his part separately in Australia while being directed over a video call. Then they edited Max's part together, which was filmed a year before.
5 Disney secrets you didn't know. If you look closely, some scenes from different Disney movies are quite similar. This is because the drawings were made by hand, and the animators only make a few changes to create a new scene. Lilo's voice belongs to the actress who played the role of Samara Morgan in the movie The Ring. Since Walt Disney wanted to spend most of his free time at Disneyland, he created a secret apartment on the 2nd floor of the fire station on Main Street, located on the famous avenue that leads to the park's Central Plaza. The name of the wizard in the movie Fantasia is Yensid, which is Disney in reverse. Simba means lion in the Swahili language, and Boo's real name is Mary because the person who plays her is called Mary Gibbs. Finally, Walt ordered to build a bunch of tunnels underneath the park to allow the actors to get from place to place without the public noticing so they wouldn't lose the magic of the place. 5 illegal things you've done before. Using a fake name online, whether it's for Instagram, an online game, or a survey. You could be charged for the federal crime of hacking, which is 5 to 20 years in prison. Watching movies on free websites. Unless it's a paid service like Netflix, most free websites won't have a license to the show or movie. Connecting to a public Wi-Fi. If you've connected to an unprotected Wi-Fi that isn't a restaurant, then it's illegal because you're using a service that someone else is paying for. Using social media when you're underage. To use apps like Instagram, Snapchat, and YouTube, you legally have to be 13 or older. And for WhatsApp, you have to be 16 or older. Finally, sharing subscription passwords with friends. In 2016, a law was made that you need permission from the website before sharing your password or else it's illegal. 5 everyday things that prove our life is a lie. Mini carrots sold in supermarkets aren't really that size. They're cut to look like that and more noticeable to the eye. Hair doesn't grow thicker if you cut it or shave it. Many people think this because the tip that's left is blunt, which makes it appear to be thicker until it's finished growing. The taste of Coca-Cola changes when it's packaged in cans. The only container that it doesn't change taste is in glass, because it's chemically inert, which means that it doesn't affect the product. The gold medals in the Olympics aren't only made of gold. They're made of pure silver that's plated in gold, so they only actually contain about 1.34% of gold, which would be equivalent to 6 grams. Finally, for the longest time, people have been using bricks for their walls because it's sturdy, but nowadays companies can make anything look like brick walls. So if it looks like this, it may not be as sturdy as you think. 4 places on the planet that science can't explain. Devil's Caldera waterfall is formed by 2 waterfalls. One falls into a cavity while the other one continues downstream normally. Scientists have tried to find out where the water that falls through the cavity goes, but so far they have no clue. Stonehenge is a rock formation built thousands of years ago, but how would they lift each rock if they weighed between 4 and 37 tons? Archaeologists have suggested that they use systems of sleds, wheels, and boats, but they still don't know for sure. Every night for the past 4 decades, bright lights of different colors and shapes appear in the sky over Hessdalen. Scientists think that they are formed from luminescent particles resulting from the evaporation of water from a radioactive lake. The boiling river of Amazon has a temperature of around 91 degrees Celsius, but scientists have no clue why it reaches that temperature because there's no active volcanoes to heat the water nearby.
5 photos you'll have to look at twice. First off, in this picture, it looks like the person only has half a body, but the reason it looks like that is because they're just holding up a mirror. At first, it looks like the camel wearing the red is standing on the camel wearing the blue, but the camel in the red is just farther back in the photo. It looks like this rock is falling from the sky and about to hit the raccoon, but it's actually just a rock in a lake, and the lake has a reflection of the sky. At first, this might look like a painting, but it's actually just a swan swimming in water. And finally, we have this building that's almost floating, and to be honest, I don't even know what's going on here.
Here's 5 things that feel illegal but actually aren't. Number 1, calling in sick when you're actually sick. Number 2, leaving a store without buying anything. Number 3, leaving class when the bell rings and not when the teacher dismisses you. Number 4, having your meal returned because they didn't bring you what you asked for. And number 5, asking a salesperson about an item then not buying it. Here's 5 world records you didn't know existed. The most toothpicks in a beard. It took Joel 3 hours and 13 minutes to put 3,500 toothpicks in his beard. The longest hair on a teenager, which is 5 feet and 7 inches. The longest hula hoop spun, which is just over 17 feet in diameter. The tallest hat, which is 15 feet and 9 inches. And finally, the largest table tennis bat, which is over 11 feet tall and 6 feet long. 10 mind-blowing examples of the Mandela effect. The Monopoly Man never had a molecule on his eye. The monkey Curious George never had a tail. The end of Pikachu's tail was never black. Jiffy's peanut butter was never a thing, it's just Jif. One of C-3PO's legs is actually silver. Double stuffed Oreo cookies are spelled with 1 F. The word fruit in Fruit Loops was never spelled with 2 O's. The Flintstones is actually spelled with 2 T's. The Bernstein Bears is actually the Berenstain Bears. And finally, there's never been a hyphen in between the word Kit Kat. A cop buys lemonade from this girl's stand, then returns the next day to surprise her. Gabrielle asked her parents if they could buy her a tablet, but unfortunately they couldn't afford it. So she thought of the perfect way to make some money with a lemonade stand. Her mom took her to a place downtown which had lots of traffic. Then all of a sudden an officer walked up to them. He said, "How much are you charging today, miss?" And she replied with 50 cents. The cop gave her $3 and said he would tell other people about her lemonade stand. She had tons of people buy lemonade, then eventually another cop pulled up. He asked her what she wanted to do with the money, and she said she wanted to buy a tablet for school and to play games on. The officer told her mom that since she probably wouldn't make enough money to buy a tablet, he wanted to help them out. So he went back home to get his old iPad, but it wouldn't turn on. When he went back to the lemonade stand to tell them the bad news, he asked the girl how her lemonade sale went. She said she made a few dollars, but she gave it to her mom because her gas tank was empty. He decided he couldn't just leave without giving her what she wanted. So the next day, when her family was watching her brother's football game, the girl seen the officer in the parking lot, so she ran over to him, and he surprised her with a brand new tablet that he just bought for her.
Animals that are bigger than you thought. This is how big horses' lungs are. This is how big a giant leatherback sea turtle is compared to a human. Here's how big a giant African land snail is compared to a hand. Here's how big a blue whale's heart is, again compared to a human. Here's how big eagle claws are compared to a human hand. And here's how big a saltwater crocodile is. Rich athletes that went completely broke, part 1. First off, we have Mike Tyson, who's earned over $400 million in his career. He spent a lot of money on random things, but the most random one has to be his tigers. He spent a total of $70,000 to get 3 tigers, but in order to feed them, he has to pay another $200,000 per year. He then had to pay another $125,000 to get them house trained at his $2.5 million mansion. But that didn't seem to work because one of them attacked his neighbor, and he was forced to pay another $250,000 in damage bills. So just from his tigers alone, he spent $650,000, which still isn't that much for him since he can get paid $30 million for a fight. But he kept doing things like that, for example spending $2 million on gold bathtubs, millions more on limos, parties, clothes, vehicles, mansions, and a ton more. Until in 2003 when he went bankrupt, and by the age of 37 he was $38 million in debt. But only 7 years before that he spent over $400,000 on one night of partying for his 30th birthday. 3 athletes who got caught cheating. This goalkeeper ran pretty far from his net to try and save a ball, but he missed it and he couldn't get back in the net in time to save the ball, so he decided to fake being unconscious. The medics ran out to check on him, but they realized he was faking it and the refs gave him a red card. During a professional golf tournament, the player named Patrick Reed was hitting from the sand. And in golf, when you're in the sand, you're not allowed to touch your club to the ground. But when he was taking a practice swing, he purposely hit the sand on his way back so he could get a better angle at the ball. This one isn't really cheating, but a football player bribed a ref by giving him $1 as a joke, but the NFL didn't find it very funny and they fined him $20,000.
Athletes who were caught cheating. In 2012, it was confirmed that cyclist Lance Armstrong had used drugs throughout his career to enhance his performance. He received a lifetime ban and got his 7 Tour de France victories taken away. Tom Brady demanded that the balls being used in a game between the Patriots and the Indianapolis Colts were to be slightly inflated to gain an advantage. Although they won 45-7, Brady was fined $4 million and banned for 4 games. Ben Johnson cheated to win the 100-meter dash in the 1988 Olympics. A prohibited anabolic steroid was detected in his samples, for which he was banned for 2 years. A few years later, he tested positive again and was banned for life. Finally, in the 1986 World Cup, in a game between Argentina and England, Diego Maradona scored a goal with his hand, and the referee counted it despite the evidence. Bad habits that are actually good for you. Sleeping in. Waking up when your body tells you to wake up rather than your alarm keeps your metabolism up, which means you could eat more food without gaining weight. And people who undersleep are more likely to eat larger portions of junk food. Complaining. Always looking at the bright side of life won't necessarily make you a happier person, but being realistic about the good and bad parts of your life has shown to be better for your mental health. Being messy. People who are messy tend to be more creative, and they found to be 36% more efficient than people who are neat. Dust mites have a hard time living in messy conditions like an unmade bed, so it can also be a good thing for people with allergies. A robber pointed his gun at this man's kids, and you won't believe what he did. In 2011, an armed robber went into the Bank of America. The first thing he did was point his gun at the workers, and told all the customers to lie down on their bellies. Then he put bags on the counter and forced the workers to fill them with money. While they were doing that, the robber pointed his gun at 2 children. This made the kid's father mad, so he came up with a plan to defeat him in his head. He waited for the robber to go outside, then when he did, the father ran after him, then started trying to tackle him onto the ground. But the robber pointed his gun to the father's face. The father then grabbed his neck and twisted his arm, which caused him to fall to the ground. He then took the weapon and money and pointed it at the robber. It only took him a few seconds before he realized it was a plastic gun, and at the same time the police arrived. Since he saved the bank from losing a ton of money, the news decided to interview him, and he introduced himself as Sergeant Eddie Peoples, who had been in 5 major deployments. He said the gun didn't scare him, but when he pointed it at his kids, he knew he had to do something.
Athletes who got caught cheating, part 3. In June 2002, a player on Turkey's soccer team kicked the ball at a player on Brazil's team. The ball hit his leg, but he flopped onto the ground and pretended that it hit his face. When the ref saw him in pain, the player that kicked the ball was kicked out of the game and his team received a penalty. But I guess the Brazil player forgot that replays existed, because after the penalty, the whole crowd started yelling to check the replays. After checking the replays in slow motion, they realized that the ball didn't come close to his face and he was fined around 11,000 American dollars. In 2014, Michael Pineda put pine tar on his neck and hand so he could rub it on the baseball, which makes it curve more and also harder to hit. He did this 2 times in the same week, and the first game resulted in a win. But the second time, viewers noticed it and started posting about it on social media, which even got the commentators to talk about it. But by the time the other team inquired about it, he had already wiped it off. And after the game, he was questioned about it during an interview, but he just said that it was dirt. A couple weeks later, against the same team, he was caught this time and kicked out for 10 games.
A bank called the police on this old man, but what the cop does does to him will shock you. One day, a 92-year-old man went into the bank to withdraw cash. But when the teller noticed that his ID was expired, she said she couldn't help him. He got upset with her and they eventually called the police to have him removed from the bank. The old man didn't understand why they wouldn't let him withdraw money, which is why he got upset. When Officer Robert Joseph arrived, the bank explained that even though he had money in his account, they can't give it to him without a valid ID card. So instead of kicking him out, he drove the man to a DMV to renew his license. Then after, he brought him back to the bank so he could withdraw money like he originally intended to.
Ben & Jerry's has a graveyard for their failed ice cream flavors. They have nearly 100 ice cream flavors on the market, but not every flavor combo that they come up with is a winner. In 1997, the company built a physical cemetery to celebrate some of their retired flavors. The graveyard, that even has headstones, started with 4 flavors, and since then has grown to 35. Some of the flavors lasted less than a year on the shelves, like Cow Power and Rainforest Crunch, while others still have devoted fans, like Wavy Gravy and Creme Brulee. Other retired flavors include Sugar Plum, White Russian, and Miss Jelina's Sweet Potato Pie. If you ever go to the Ben & Jerry's factory in Vermont, you can even visit the site to pay your respects.
Bizarre things found in people's backyard. A man found a dinosaur bone that was 250 million years old. A couple who bought a house in California found an anti-nuclear bunker from the 1960s. It was built during the Cold War and was 4 meters underground for radiation protection. One man found human bones while doing yard work. He took them for examination and they were determined to be bones from 1,000 years ago. A man digging came across a passageway that led to the pyramids of Egypt. He dug around 30 feet down the tunnel, and archaeologists confirmed that it was a tunnel leading to Egypt's oldest pyramid. In Iowa, a family found a mammoth femur in 2010. He kept it for 16 years until it was finally examined in 2013. Scientists determined that the bone was approximately 12,000 years old and belonged to a woolly mammoth. This guy came out of a 12-year coma and what he told them shocked everyone. When Martin was 12 years old, he came home from school with a sore throat. A few days later, he was so exhausted that he almost lost control of his body and slept all the time. He eventually started to lose memory, then a few days later fell into a coma. After a while, the doctor said that Martin had completely lost touch with the outside world and there was nothing they could do to help him. Martin was sent home and his parents were told that all they could do was look after him and hope he woke up. When he was 17, he regained his consciousness and memory, but he still couldn't talk. But he couldn't let his parents know that because no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't speak. He even heard his mom say that it would be better if everything just ended right now. Martin was sad because he could hear her say that, but he knew she just wanted what was best for him. When he was 25, a paramedic that was working with him noticed he was trying to smile and nod at her. As soon as she noticed this, he was sent to a center for alternative communication, where he passed multiple tests to prove he was conscious. When his mom found this out, she quit her job and developed a computer program so that Martin could communicate. He even met his sister's friend and a year later got married to her. And finally, in 2011, he released a book called Ghost Boy where he shared his story. Dark secrets that zoos don't want you to know. Zoo pens are a possible source of salmonella, E. coli, and many other diseases, so be careful when touching the animals. Some animals can suffer from zoonosis, which they get from being held in a zoo that causes them to tick, groom excessively, and make them anxious. And to control it, they give them medication. When zoos have too many animals in very little space, they give them pills to prevent them from having babies, or they sacrifice them at birth. The food given to animals isn't always the best. In many cases, they're given processed foods, and animals like tigers who only eat meat develop dental problems and become anxious because they can't hunt. Finally, it's 50 times more expensive to keep an elephant in a zoo than to let it run free.
These children laid on the ground to form an arrow, and you won't believe why. One Easter, about 30 kids and adults were taking part in an Easter egg hunt when they noticed a police helicopter circling over top of them. At first, they had no clue why it was there, but then they saw a man running in the distance. So 12 of the parents and kids laid down in an arrow pointing towards the man so the helicopter could see them. Apparently, the officer in the helicopter had lost sight of this man because he was following 2 people, but they split up. Thanks to the parents and the kids, he was able to find him again hiding in the trees, and the cops then got him and brought him to the police station. The helicopter driver then landed beside the kids and parents, and they all shared some Easter treats with the police team.
Chilling last photos before they went missing. Andrew Macaulay's last photo was a self-portrait taken while he was alone in his kayak in the middle of the ocean. At the age of 39, he set out on a journey to be the first person to kayak from Australia to New Zealand. Unfortunately, even though he prepared for 10 years, he was unable to make it. His kayak and camera were found, but there was no trace of him. He was most likely capsized from a wave separating him from his kayak and ended up dying from hypothermia in the middle of the ocean. Chris Creamers and Lisanne Froon. In this photo, they're both smiling at the camera with the mountains of El Pionista Trail in the background. On April 1st, 2014, they were preparing to go on the trail. After the trail, the family that was hosting was concerned because they hadn't returned, so they looked around but they couldn't find them. Days later, on the same trail, they found parts of their decomposed bodies. They think they had a fatal accident, but to this day, their deaths remain a mystery.
Companies that lied about their products. The Q-Ray bracelet was released in the 1970s, and it was claimed to improve balance, strength, and overall health. Lots of athletes used to wear them, and I even knew a few people myself who used to wear them. But in 2018, this man disagreed and gave them a $16 million lawsuit. In court, the owner said that the bracelets were ionized and that's how you get the health improvements. So the CBC Marketplace decided to bring one to the lab and analyze it, and discovered that they actually weren't ionized. But that's not all. They also had to give back $87 million worth of refunds to people who bought them and wanted their money back. After this happened, the company filed for bankruptcy. But to this day, they still have a website that they sell them on, and now they have a disclaimer that it won't treat, cure, or prevent any diseases. Criminals who expose themselves online. In 2012, Michael Baker came across a parked police car with nobody in it. Instead of just walking by it, he decided to go and grab a gas can and a hose, then put the hose in both the gas can and the police car's gas tank. Then he asked his girlfriend to take a photo of him. And instead of just keeping the photo to himself or to show his close friends, he decided to post it on Facebook for the whole world to see, and he wrote, "Don't mind if I do, LOL." The police department saw the photo and arrested him for theft. He told the news that there's barely any gas left in the vehicle and he just did it for a joke. His wife apologized as well and said if they were really gonna steal gas, they wouldn't have posted it online. But even after all of this, they didn't believe him and he was put in jail for one night. And as soon as he got out, he posted again on Facebook saying this: "Just got out of jail. Yeah, LOL, I went to jail over Facebook." 3 criminals who got caught for the dumbest things. In 2011, a man from Florida attempted to rob a convenience store with a squirt gun filled with juice. Luckily, the worker recognized the juice as juice that they sell and he called the police. They then tracked him down and arrested him. In 2014, a man from Australia attempted to rob a gas station with a banana. He had peeled the banana and used it to simulate the shape of a gun. The man was also arrested and charged with armed robbery. In 2018, a man in California was breaking into a house, but he didn't realize that he had accidentally dialed 911 while he was still in the house. The operator heard noises in the background, so he sent police to the phone's location, where the man was then arrested.
Dark secrets you didn't know about SeaWorld. SeaWorld is home to orcas who were kidnapped from the ocean, but the stories they tell about their captures are way different from what actually happened. For example, one of the stories they tell is that one of the orcas, which they named Tilikum, was rescued when she was 2 years old because she was injured in the ocean. But the truth is that she was taken away from her natural habitat against her will and given to SeaWorld for exhibition. The dolphins in the park suffer from stress caused by the contact they have with humans, which prevents them from feeding, resting, and taking care of their babies. Even though this information is supported by studies done at the University of Newcastle, they continue to let the public touch them. Finally, all the animals suffer from terrible consequences from overcrowding and unnatural living conditions. For example, the whales live in spaces that would be equivalent to us living in a bathtub, which doesn't allow them to swim enough to stay healthy, and you could tell by their collapsed dorsal fins. But SeaWorld claims that it's a natural condition.
This dad loses it after finding out what the babysitter did to his daughter. Jason Weshy, the father of 3-year-old Hannah, is a hardworking man, and some days he just can't get everything done that he wants to while looking after his daughter. So he decided to look around for a babysitter, and he got recommended one by a friend. The 35-year-old babysitter named Lindsay had been looking after his daughter for a few months now, when one day she phoned 911 to report that Hannah had fallen to the ground unconscious. Jason rushed to the babysitter's house as soon as he found out, and when he got there, he saw his daughter on the ground unconscious with a black eye. She was brought to a children's hospital where she had to have part of her skull removed to relieve the swelling in her brain. When the cops questioned the babysitter, she admitted that she was shaking the girl, which caused the girl to fall over onto concrete and be put in a coma. The little girl was left brain dead, and after 3 days, she was pronounced dead. The babysitter was charged with child endangerment and assault, but she pleaded not guilty and was let go free. This dad told 911 that his baby choked on milk, but then they figured out what really happened. One day, this single mother asked her ex-husband if he could watch their child named Xavier while she went back to work for the first time since she had the baby. Her ex kept texting her all day about how annoying Xavier was being. She told him to just push through for the day and she would find a babysitter for next time. Then at 2:30 in the afternoon, she got another text from him saying that Xavier had stopped breathing because he had choked on milk and that they were going to the hospital. She then packed up from work and rushed to the hospital too. The doctors did a CT scan and found out that Xavier was bleeding from inside his brain. Then she was shocked when the police arrived to do interviews. That night, the father was arrested for first-degree child abuse. Xavier was in a coma for 2 weeks, and the doctors told his mom that he might be blind, he might not be able to move, and he might not be able to speak. 3 months later, he so far wasn't diagnosed with anything, but to try and prevent anything bad from happening in the future, his mom started taking him to a bunch of different therapists. Dangerous things scientists did to themselves. Henry Smolinski was tired of working his job as an engineer, so he decided to quit and pursue his dream. dream, which was to make the world's first flying car available for anyone in the world to purchase. His plan was to take a Ford Petna and put it together with the tail and wings of a Cessna Skymaster plane. After a bunch of successful test flights, the public launch was only a few months away. But one day, when Henry and his co-founder was doing further testing, they came crashing down. Due to bad welds and bad locking mechanisms, the wings failed and they crashed. Unfortunately, everyone in the flying car passed away. This man passed away after being shot by a dog. 30-year-old Joseph Smith was sitting in the passenger seat of his friend's truck, and in the back seat was hunting gear, a rifle, and a dog. According to the police, the dog at the back was a canine which belonged to his friend, and it stepped on the rifle, firing at him, which killed him. This dog sleeps in a graveyard, and here's why. Wiley is a Siberian wolf who belonged to its owner named Gladys, who unfortunately passed away. In a video posted in 2013 that has over 4 million views, it looked and sounded like the dog was making the same noises that humans make when we cry. It was the first time the family had ever seen him like this. He was doing this as he laid down on the grave of his old owner. His family had to pet him and talk to him to make him feel better. Years ago, Wiley was a service dog who helped war veterans overcome their post-traumatic stress disorder. After Gladys's death, her grandson promised to take good care of Wiley for the rest of his life. Some people think that the dog was sneezing and not crying, but Gladys's family claims that they've never seen him do that before and he's never done it again. What do you think? 5 people who celebrated too hard. This groom got too excited before the big entrance and ended up possibly getting a concussion. Puerto Rican baseball player Adin Diaz suffered a knee injury while celebrating a win. Steph Curry couldn't help but jump up and down after getting a three-pointer, but he also couldn't help taking a spill a few moments later.
A little too excited because he trips over the line in his home building.
These Celtic fans celebrating in the streets of Boston forgot how glass works. NFL player Lamar Houston celebrates a tackle, but ends up tearing his ACL.
Play by Lamar Houston, and then watch the celebration. Now, mind you, injury on the play. We'll be right back.
Strange animals that actually exist. The star-nosed mole has a tentacled snout that it uses as a super sensitive spare paw packed with over 25,000 sensory receptors, which is compared to the 17,000s that humans have in their hand. The Borneo tarsier is a nocturnal, carnivorous primate that looks like a creature straight out of the Harry Potter series. The lowland streaked tenrec is a mammal similar to a hedgehog that lives in Madagascar, although it looks more like a bumblebee on a bad day. The pink fairy armadillo is only found in central Argentina, and they're so rare that not even scientists have been able to tell if they're an endangered species or not. Finally, the magnificent frigate bird is native to Galapagos Islands and gets its name from the big red sac that the males have on their chest, which they can balloon up to try and attract a mate. 10 quick facts that could save your life. Don't repair your own microwave. They can hold electrical currents even when unplugged. If you're ever impaled by something, leave the object in place and go to the hospital rather than trying to pull it out yourself. If you're choking, make sure people know. Don't panic and just walk away. If you have a fire in a pan on the stove, cover it with a lid or towel. Don't eat snow for hydration. The energy that's required from your body to melt the snow will actually dehydrate you even more. If you think you're having a heart attack, you should chew aspirin instead of swallowing it. If you're ever in a falling elevator, laying down flat and covering your face is your best bet for survival. A wagging tail does not always mean that a dog is happy. Dogs also wag their tail when they're fearful or as a warning. Never approach a horse from behind. If a tornado doesn't look like it's moving left or right, it's most likely moving towards you. Surprisingly common ways to die. Lawnmower accidents account for almost 70 deaths per year in the US. One study estimates that nearly 24 people in France die each year from champagne corks. Around 71 people die every year from drowning after being caught in a rip current. A report issued in the US claims that around 900 people die every year from diseases related to or associated with constipation. And finally, vending machine accidents account for nearly 2 deaths per year. 5 of the newest words added to the Oxford English Dictionary in 2023. First up is dap, which is defined as a casual greeting, typically involving slapping palms, bumping fists, or snapping fingers. The acronym CODA, meaning meaning child of deaf adult, has been around since the 90s, but was recently popularized by the Oscar movie with the same name, and now is officially in the dictionary. Porch pirate refers to someone who steals a package that is left unattended outside of the recipient's house. Final girl is a character term in horror movies referring to the female protagonist who defeats the villain and is the only one left alive. And finally, a super yacht is, well, exactly what it sounds like. An extravagantly luxurious boat reserved for the richest of the rich. 10 common misconceptions corrected. Napoleon was 5'7", which was slightly above average at that time. Chameleons don't change color to camouflage themselves. They usually do it to regulate body temperature. Humans don't only use 10% of our brains. Shaving doesn't cause hair to grow back thicker. If you swallow a piece of gum, it won't sit in your stomach for 7 years. No one was ever burned during the Salem witch trials. There is no significant evidence to drinking 8 glasses of water per day. The Declaration of Independence was not signed on July 4th, 1776. It was signed on August 2nd, 1776. Humans have more than 5 senses, including balance and thermoception. Hair and fingernails don't keep growing after death, but it might seem that way because the skin around them recedes. 5 world records that will probably never be broken. In 2004, Thomas Blackthorne broke the record for heaviest weight supported by a human tongue. He pierced his tongue with a hook and lifted 27 pounds for 5 seconds. He'd apparently been training for 6 years before this to perform the stunt without getting hurt. Jonathan Lee Richards holds the record for the largest number of lawsuits filed. He sued over 4,000 companies and individuals, including Bill Gates and the Pope. When he found out that he held the record, he sued Guinness World Records. A man in Pune, India holds the record for the longest fingernails. He didn't cut his nails for 66 years, and just before he cut them, they measured 29 feet, 10.1 inches in length. Robert Wadlow holds the record for being the tallest person in the world, at 8 feet and 11 inches tall. He continued to grow until he sadly passed away in 1940 at the age of 22, but his record still remains to this day. Finally, we have Kevin Fast, who beat the record for the longest distance an airplane was pulled by a human. He pulled an entire plane for 28 feet. Due to how hard this is, it's unlikely that anyone will ever beat it, but if someone does, Kevin said that he's prepared to do it again. 4 moments of pure coincidence. This guy's marathon number perfectly matched the number on his t-shirt. But that's not all. His marathon time was also the exact same number. This pack of flamingos took the shape of a flamingo. This man was asked to reenact his lottery win for a segment on the news. And when he did, he won the lottery again.
I'm 250,000. I'm not joking. You're not, are you? Really? I just won 250,000.
Finally, this guy was frustrated with his broken TV, so he decided to stab it with a fork. And I guess it's just what the TV needed. Here's 5 things you can buy with $1 billion. First up, the Miami Marlins. At $980 million, this is the only US MLB team you could afford. The next cheapest team is Kansas City Royals at $1.025 billion. Next up, a private island. You could buy an island in Fiji, an island in Thailand, and an island in the Bahamas, and you would still have $500 million left. You could almost afford the world's most expensive super yacht, which is $1.2 billion. The 6,000 square foot yacht is called the Eclipse, and it belongs to a Russian billionaire who also owns the Chelsea Football Club. Next up, a skyscraper. To build a skyscraper from the ground up, it'll cost at least $150 million, but a skyscraper in New York will cost you the full $1 billion. And finally, the White House. It costs $398 million and comes with 132 rooms, 28 fireplaces, and a bowling alley. But it doesn't come with the presidency. Lionel Messi risked his entire career for a cookie. Messi is one of the greatest football players of all time. He became a starting player for FC Barcelona at 17 years old, and by age 20, he was one of the best players in the world. But at the height of his career, something strange started to happen. He vomited during a match. Not just once, but over and over and over again. The rumors started to run wild, many people saying that he was sick. He tried to play it off, but eventually he went to the doctors and they discovered the truth. Messi had a terrible diet. He apparently liked to binge chocolates and chug sodas before his matches. He even had a special love for Argentinian cookies called alfajores. Eventually, he quit the junk food and consulted with a nutritionist who helped him create a more sustainable diet for a world-class athlete. This man celebrated his 100th birthday with a parade of dogs. Dr. Robert Moore recently celebrated his 100th birthday, and in honor of this milestone, his children wanted to surprise him with something special. Robert was a known dog lover, so they put out an invite to the community to participate in a dog parade past Robert's house. They expected maybe 20 to 30 people to show up, but on the day of the event, dogs dogs lined up down the block. There were dogs in hats, dogs in cars, dogs in bow ties, and dogs in wheelchairs. In total, 200 showed up to wish Robert a happy birthday. And Robert even pet every single one of them. This man faked heart attacks for free food. A 55-year-old man living in Spain was recently arrested for faking heart attacks to get out of restaurants before paying the bill. Multiple reports claim that the man was dressed in designer clothes, posed as a Russian tourist, and spoke in a mix of a bunch of different languages. He always started his meal with a Russian salad, then he ordered multiple expensive dishes, like lobster and seafood paella. Then he washed it all down with a few glasses of whiskey. He dramatically clenched his chest and fell to the ground to avoid paying. He managed to get away with doing this 20 times, but after his most recent offense, the restaurant's manager called the police and the man was arrested. He spent 42 days in jail and will pay a minimal fine. People with road rage getting what they deserve. This guy tried to throw something at another car on the highway, but he ended up taking off his own side view mirror. This guy got out of his car to confront another driver during busy traffic, but he forgot to put his car in park. This guy blocked another driver with his truck, but the driver gets away and the man is pulled over by the police. This guy flips off another driver, then loses control of his truck. This man approaches another car with a belt and gets pepper sprayed to the face. This is the most dangerous theme park in the world. Action Park was a water and amusement park in Vernon, New Jersey that opened in the 1970s. It was revolutionary because it was one of the first water parks in the US and one of the biggest amusement parks with 75 rides. But as guests would find out, not all of those rides were safe. They were built to minimize costs and there was very little concern for safety. The staff was made up of mostly teens who were undertrained to operate the rides. And as a result, people were constantly hurt. A nearby hospital reported 10 to 15 injuries per day from the park. One of the most insane rides from Action Park was called the Cannonball Loop, a tubed water slide with a vertical loop like a roller coaster. Several people got stuck in the loop, and the ones who made it through suffered from bloody noses and back injuries. At least 6 people died at Action Park, and countless others were taken to hospital for things like gas poison, bone fractures, burns, and other injuries. Eventually, the park was shut down in 1996, but it reopened in 2016 under new ownership. This teacher promised her students a treat if she made an impossible shot. This 3rd grade teacher, Kathleen Fitzpatrick, or as her students at Holy Trinity School in Washington, D.C. call her, Miss Fitz. On one Friday afternoon during recess, Miss Fitz was playing basketball with her students, and she decided to make them a bet. If she can make a shot, she'll bring in hot chocolate for the whole class on Monday. Miss Fitz then takes a few dribbles as her students cheer her on. She then launches up a Hail Mary shot, and boom, the kids go nuts. It turns out Miss Fitz actually played college basketball, and once hit a 3-point buzzer beater to win the game. But I bet this shot for hot cocoa felt even better. This is the world's smallest mammal. It's called the Kun-Kitty bat, or the bumblebee bat because it's so small. It weighs less than 2 grams and is 3 centimeters long. The bumblebee bat was first identified in Thailand in 1973, and they can only be found in certain caves in Myanmar. Bumblebee bats are completely harmless and are pretty lazy. They emerge only 2 times a day and for around 25 minutes to feed on flies and spiders before returning back to their cave. Most of the caves that bumblebee bees live in are not accessible to humans, so it's almost impossible to guess their population. But the species is considered endangered because of small numbers and the fact that they only reproduce once a year. So if you ever see a bumblebee bat in the wild, consider yourself lucky. 3 times people discovered their junk was worth a fortune. A man in Michigan once discovered that his 22-pound rock that he used as a doorstop for over 30 years was actually a meteorite from the 1930s and was worth an estimated $100,000. In 1989, a man bought an old painting at a flea market for just $4, only because he liked the frame. When he went to remove the painting from the frame, he discovered an original copy of the United States Declaration of Independence from 1776 that sold at an auction for $4.24 million. And finally, a fisherman from the Philippines discovered a giant clam with a massive pearl weighing 75 pounds. For 10 years, the fisherman hid the pearl underneath his bed as a good luck charm. But when a relative found out about this, she convinced the man to put the pearl on display. It's by far the largest pearl ever discovered in the world, and it's worth over $100 million. 3 of the most expensive pizzas in the world. At $250, the Gordon Ramsay pizza at May's restaurant in London once held the Guinness World Record for the most expensive pizza in the world. It comes topped with Italian onion puree, buffalo mozzarella, pancetta, and shaved white truffles. The Nino Bellissima pizza at Gino's restaurant in New York City costs $1,000. It's topped with 6 different types of caviars and 2 whole lobster tails. It reportedly cost the restaurant $720 to make. Finally, the most expensive pizza in the world is served by Renato Viola. It takes 72 hours to prepare and comes topped with 3 rare types of caviar and Norwegian lobster. It's served with expensive champagne and rare cognac. The chef even comes to your house to prepare it, but it'll cost you $12,000. 5 huge pop songs that were originally written for other artists. Pharrell originally wrote the song Happy for CeeLo Green, but studio executives wanted Pharrell to sing it himself, and it went on to become a mega hit. The Beyoncé breakup song called Irreplaceable has distinct country vibes because it was originally meant for a country singer like Shania Twain or Faith Hill. Selena Gomez's first song called Come and Get It was a huge hit that started her music career, but the song was originally written for Rihanna, who passed on it. And speaking of Rihanna, her hit song called Umbrella was written for Britney Spears in 2007, but both her and Mary J. Blige passed on it. And finally, Baby One More Time is how the world was introduced to Britney Spears, but it was first offered to the girl group called TLC. Here's how to survive a rip current. Rip currents are the leading cause of lifeguard rescues on the beach, and they're responsible for hundreds of deaths by drowning every year. So here's what to do if you ever find yourself in one. A rip is a strong and narrow current of water which moves directly away from shore. If you're on the beach, it often looks like a calm spot of water in between the waves. If you find yourself being carried away from shore in a rip current, your first step is to stay calm, because panicking will tire you out and you need energy to stay floating. If you're a strong swimmer, your next step will be to try swimming parallel to the shoreline until you escape. But if you're less confident in your ability to swim, you'll want to try and stay floating and get someone to help. Scientists discovered that 80 to 90% of rip currents travel in large circles. So if you can stay afloat above water, the current will most likely take you back to shore. The most important thing to remember is do not try and swim back to shore, because even the weakest rip current is stronger than the best Olympic swimmer. Life advice from people in their 100s. At 102 years old, Dr. Gladys McGarry says, just don't get stuck. Or if you do, start looking for the light. It's always there, you just have to keep looking for it. Flossie Dickey was a 110-year-old woman who, when asked for her advice on living such a long life, said, I don't fight it, I love it. Dr. Howard Tucker is the oldest practicing doctor at 100 years old, so it makes sense that his advice is don't retire. Agnes Fenton, an 111-year-old from New Jersey, credited her long life to beer and whiskey and advised younger folks to stay stylish. 4 people who celebrated too early. In this volleyball game, a player managed to save the ball with her foot, and the other team didn't expect it, so they started celebrating. After this goalie saved the ball from going in the net, he stopped paying attention to the ball and celebrated, but then this happened. During the Ironman, which is where you swim 2.5 miles, like 112 miles, and run a 26-mile marathon, this guy started jumping in the air to celebrate, then his ankle gave out on him right before the finish line. And finally, during this race, the person in 5th place started sprinting as fast as she could to pass everyone and win the race, while the person in the lead was already celebrating. 5 celebrities who turned down famous roles. The role of Gamora in Guardians of the Galaxy was originally offered to Amanda Seyfried, but she turned it down because she thought the movie would be a flop. The role then went to Zoe Saldana. Steven Spielberg, the director of Jurassic Park, admitted that his first choice to play Dr. Alan Grant was Harrison Ford, but he passed on the opportunity for unknown reasons. Selena Gomez was originally supposed to play the lead role in Disney's Camp Rock, but she turned it down so it could go to her friend Demi Lovato. Rachel McAdams passed on the opportunity to play Andy Sachs in The Devil Wears Prada 3 times. The part eventually went to Anne Hathaway, who later admitted that she was 9th choice for the role. Drew Barrymore was originally casted to play Sidney Prescott in the Scream franchise, but had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts. She does still appear in the film, but the lead went to Neve Campbell. 5 people who can't catch a break. The only thing worse than paying for something and it getting stuck in the vending machine is doing it for a 2nd time. This brownie pan cracked straight down the middle in the oven. The brownies still look good though. Just watch out for glass. This car gets stuck in a sinkhole, and then gets even more stuck in a sinkhole. What started as a harmless stunt turned into a call to the fire department. Finally, these 2 toddlers decided to ruin their mom's day by covering themselves and the bathroom in blue soap. 5 easy questions that most smart people get wrong. Watch till the end to get the answers. If you're running in a race and you pass the 3rd place runner, what place are you now in? What color is the black box on an airplane? Which European explorer first discovered America? Which president is on the $100 bill? Finally, what is the largest desert in the world? Now here are the answers. Number 1, you'd be in 2nd place. 2, a black box is orange. 3, Leif Erikson discovered America. 4, no president. Benjamin Franklin is on the $100 bill. And finally, Antarctica is the largest desert in the world, based on the definition of a desert, meaning a place that gets little rain. Classic movies that bombed at the box office. Despite being loved by lots of people, Shawshank Redemption cost $25 million to make, and it just barely broke even. The original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory cost $3 million to make, and it barely made $500,000 in the box office, which made it a flop. Office Space is now regarded as one of the greatest comedy movies ever, but when it first released in 1999, it barely made back the budget of $10 million. The movie called Dazed and Confused launched the careers of Matthew McConaughey, Ben Affleck, and Parker Posey, but it barely made any money when it came out in 1993. Finally, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World had a massive budget at $60 million, and while the movie was a critical success, it was a massive fail in the box office. 5 things you use all the time but have no idea what they're called. The standard eye chart test is called a Snellen chart, which is named after Herman Snellen, the man who developed it. The long, stringy parts on the inside of a banana peel are called phloem bundles. The small bumps on a ping pong paddle are called pips. The white crescent shapes at the bottom of your fingernails are called lunula. The swoosh sound that ball gowns make when they move is called a screw. The most expensive TV shows ever made. In the final season of the sitcom called Friends, each episode cost $10 million to make. The majority of that went to the main cast, who were paid $1 million each. The initial budget for the first season of the Game of Thrones was around $6 million per episode, but by the last season, they were spending up to $15 million per episode. The first season of the Game of Thrones prequel series, called House of the Dragon, was given an even bigger budget of around $20 million per episode. Stranger Things is one of the most successful Netflix series ever, so in season 4, they upped the budget to $30 million per episode. And finally, the most expensive TV show ever is The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, with a season 1 budget of $465 million or $58 million per episode. 4 deep-sea creatures that will haunt your dreams. The stonefish is the most venomous fish in the world, and also probably the ugliest. It hunts by camouflaging itself in sand and then striking its prey at incredible speeds. Next up, living up to its name, we have the fang-toothed fish, which has the longest fangs in the ocean. So long that it can't even close its mouth. The vampire squid is a living fossil, which means it's changed very little since it's first discovered on Earth, which was over 300 million years ago before dinosaurs. And finally, we have the blobfish, whose body is made up of a jelly-like substance. The blobfish has become popular through t-shirts, memes, and even stuffed animals. It's so ugly that it's kind of cute. 5 animals that saved the day. When this woman had a seizure while she was out on a walk, her dog named Clover stopped the car in the middle of the road and didn't move until the driver realized that she needed help. After an 11-year-old fell into an enclosure at the zoo, Jambo, the silverback gorilla, checked on the boy and protected him from the other, more aggressive gorillas. He was then given the nickname Jambo the Gentle Giant. A big cat handler was nearly mauled by a leopard, but luckily his tiger buddy was there to save the day. When a loose dog attacks a boy on a bike, the family's beloved cat named Tara steps in and chases the dog away. Finally, in Thailand at an elephant sanctuary, a baby elephant rescues a man who wasn't actually in danger, but is still really cute. After 93 days under the sea, this man is 10 years younger. You might remember Joe DeTuri from one of my previous videos. He's the former US Navy diver and biomedical engineer who locked himself in an underwater pod for nearly 100 days to document the effects of pressurization on humans. And as it turns out, the effects are pretty good. After returning to land, scientists and doctors determined that this experiment set his biological clock back approximately 10 years. Living in a pressurized cabin triggered a 20% growth growth in the length of his telomeres, which are what keeps your DNA from breaking down. As we age, our telomeres generally shorten, but Turi was able to reverse the effects. His body's stem cell count grew by nearly 1,000%, and he experienced a 60% increase in deep restorative sleep. More research is needed to fully understand the effects of living under the sea, but it could be the key to aging backwards. 5 human body parts that we no longer need. Auricular muscles control the visible part of the ear. Other animals use these muscles to localize sound, but humans have lost the ability to use these. Some humans can wiggle their ears, but that's it. Wisdom teeth helped our ancestors to chew food in the wild, but now they're not as necessary and generally have trouble fitting inside our jaws. The plica semilunaris is a fold of tissue on the inner corner of the eye, and this is actually from the third eyelid that humans used to have, similar to birds and reptiles. The palmaris longus muscle runs from the wrist to the elbow. It helped their ancestors with their grip, but we no longer use it, and actually about 10% of humans don't even have it. Erector pili are the muscle fibers that produce goosebumps. Our ancestors used these to keep warm, but humans don't really have a practical use for them anymore. PR campaigns that completely backfired. To promote their new grilled chicken strips, KFC teamed with Oprah Winfrey to offer a free meal to anyone who downloaded a coupon through Oprah's website. But the company underestimated Oprah's popularity and had to limit the promotion to the first 100 people per store. They were later sued. In 2015, SeaWorld encouraged people to use the hashtag #AskSeaWorld on Twitter to ask questions about the theme park. But instead, people took the opportunity to criticize them by saying things like, "Why are your parking lots bigger than your orca tanks?" And "Why do you keep breeding whales when you barely have enough room for one?" As a part of an ad campaign to promote their new items that are under $1 on the menu, Taco Bell publicly asked the rapper 50 Cent to change his name to either 79 cent, 89 cent, or 99 cent. 50 Cent later sued the company for using his name to promote their product without his consent. Pranks that backfired. This YouTuber likes to prank people on the street by complimenting them on their shoes before stepping on them. But what a surprise, people don't really like it when this happens. Because of this, the YouTuber has been attacked multiple times. These guys place a fake turd on top of a luxury car, but when the owner of the vehicle notices this and runs out, he tases them. What the fuck? This kid calls 911 and tries to order a pizza. Dispatch keeps him on the phone to try and see if he needs medical attention, then hangs up when she realizes this is a prank. The kid decides to call 911 again, and this time he says he needs help with his computer. But after the second call, he gets a surprise when the police actually show up at his door. Finally, these guys crash a college lecture dressed as characters from Dragon Ball Z, but when one of them tries to throw a spirit bomb across the room, it hits a light on the ceiling which crashes down onto a student's tablet. This 90-year-old woman lives out her birthday dream thanks to a biker gang. This is Barbara Morris, an elderly woman that lives in a nursing home in Manchester, England. Several years ago, Barbara told her children that if she lived to 90 years old, she had a birthday wish: to take a ride on a motorcycle like she did when she was younger. Barbara had figured that her children had forgot about her biker dreams, so she was stunned that on her 90th birthday, her son surprised her with a local biker gang and a Harley Davidson for her to ride. Barbara hopped on the back of the bike and rode with the 13 other bikers nearly 7 miles to a nearby pub. Her children describe her as having a daredevil spirit and nerves of steel. But for Barbara, she said she was just happy to feel wind blowing on her face. Outdated laws you won't believe still exist. In Louisiana, you can be fined $500 for delivering a pizza to someone else's house. In North Carolina, it's illegal for a bingo game to last more than 5 hours. It's also illegal to be drunk while you're playing it. In South Carolina, pinball is considered too addictive for kids, so you have to be at least 18 years old to play it. In Vermont, women must have permission from their husbands before getting fake teeth. People versus Nature, Part 2. These passengers on a cruise ship struggle against massive waves. These hikers in Ireland struggle to walk upright against this intense wind. This man watches helplessly as he loses his house to a river. This skier is just able to outrun a massive avalanche. And finally, this teenage boy endures a hailstorm in his underwear for the sake of making a video. 5 moments you wouldn't believe if they weren't on camera. First off, this delivery driver was shocked when he saw a monkey open the door to pay for the pizza. This cat learned how to drink water from the machine. These royal guards showed off an Iron Man-like suit flying from a boat to a ship. This basketball team scored to get a 3-point lead with only 3 seconds left in the game, but then this happened to tie it up. And finally, this couple had just gotten married and they were doing an interview when a tree almost fell on them. 5 Photoshop fails that are so bad it's hard to believe that they were missed. On this menu, they photoshopped in peas on rice. In this picture in a magazine, they removed the umbrellas, but they forgot to remove the reflection in the water. I don't really think that's how you're supposed to use a selfie stick. In this image on Amazon, it looks like they added in arms. And finally, in this ad, they put a family on a couch sitting in a car watching a movie.
Dumb criminals who uncovered their own crimes. In 2008, Anthony Garcia was arrested for driving with an expired license. Since he was apparently a member of the famous Rivera 13 gang, they took pictures of not only him but all of his tattoos. When one of the sergeants was looking closely at one of the photos, he seen a familiar story. Garcia's tattoo accurately showed a murder that happened on January 23, 2004. Everything from the sign on the building, the streetlights, to the trajectory of the bullets made his tattoo a confession to the crime. In the tattoo, the victim is being shot by a chopper, which is Garcia's nickname. Dopey Umar Mirza decided to rob the Paddy Power store after failing to get a job there. The thief was wearing a black ski mask and stole around $22,000 from the store. But the second he stepped outside the store, he took off the mask and the security cameras caught him. The owners of the store recognized him, and since he handed in all of his information to apply for the job, the cops easily found out where he lived and arrested him.
Everyone laughed at the price of this building until they saw what was underneath. A $17.5 million secret lies underneath this building, which is 2 hours from Savannah, Georgia. The land that the building is on is 32 acres and it has caretakers, which may make you think that there's something important hidden under there, because why else would there be guards? The property also has a 100-yard shooting range for up to 4 people. And what's hidden underneath is a nuclear blast-proof bunker that could protect against the worst of the worst. It was built in 1969 by the US Army 45 feet underground in case of a nuclear emergency. At the time, it cost $7 million to make, which would be equivalent to $45 million today. Even though it's really old, in 2012 it was renovated. They also added a bunch of things like food in case there actually was an emergency, and it has the capacity to hold 20 people for a full year or 40 people for a short period of time. 5 celebrities who own exotic pets. Salma Hayek has a rescue owl named Kering who likes to hang out on her shoulders and share her wine. Tracy Morgan loves his octopus named Boyadut so much, he spent $400,000 on a custom 2,700-gallon tank for her. In 2010, Leonardo DiCaprio spent $400 on an African spurred tortoise that could live for up to 80 years. Paris Hilton has a kinkajou named Baby Love, and even though the tropical rainforest mammal bit her once, Baby Love is still part of her family. Nick Cage has owned all sorts of crazy pets, including crows, albino cobras, and at one point, a 2-headed snake named Harvey. If your chocolate looks dusty, here's why. It means that the cocoa butter used to make the chocolate has been separated to the rest of the bar due to heat. But don't worry, it's still safe to eat, it just might not taste 100%, so you might want to use it for cooking. Here's 2 other fun facts about food. Did you know that oranges created the color orange? A long time ago, the color orange was called yellow-red, but when the fruit called an orange became popular, since it was orange, everyone started calling that color orange. And lastly, honey is the only food that can never go bad as long as it's sealed from the air.
Here's how to tell if your phone is being hacked. Your battery starts to drain quickly. This can happen when there's an unknown app running in the background of your phone. Your phone gets warm. When you're not doing anything on your phone and this happens, that could be another sign that there's something running in the background. Your phone reboots itself, turn off, open apps, and dials phone numbers. Unless your phone's really old, this can mean that somebody's tapping into it. You can't turn off your phone. Instead, your phone starts opening apps, turning up the brightness, volume, and so on. And finally, when you hear echoes during calls in locations that it hasn't happened to you in before. If you ever see a staircase in the middle of the woods, run fast. All across the world, there's been people finding staircases in the middle of the woods. But the weirdest part is, the staircases lead to nothing. None of the staircases look the same. Some of them are really old, some of them are brand new, and some of them are swirls. There's been many theories about what happens if you decide to climb the stairs. Only a few people have dared to climb to the very top, and those who did claim to be haunted ever since. One of the biggest theories that people think is that this is why so many people go missing in the woods each year. They think some people climb the stairs and are never seen again.
If you find an envelope in your car, throw it out without opening it. So let's say you open your door and there's an envelope on your seat that wasn't there before and you decide to open it. It obviously won't always be this scam, but if it is, it'll be a letter pretending to be your car's security advisors. They'll claim that your car has vulnerability in the alarm system, and they'll leave their information at the bottom requesting that you pay them in order for them to give you tips on how to fix it. But the truth is, they're nothing more than thieves. What they do is they use a master key that ruins your car's alarm system. Then they leave this letter so you phone them, then pay them, but but they don't do anything after that. They won't give you any tips on how to fix it, they'll just take your money. So the best thing to do is call the police and report what happened. Some easy things to do to try and prevent anything bad like this from happening is parking your vehicle in the open, so if thieves try to do something like this, people can see them. But most importantly, always lock your vehicle and make sure that your alarm system is working properly.
Jobs you didn't know existed. Ben Lashes is an internet famous cat manager. He manages famous cats like Grumpy Cat, Keyboard Cat, and Nyan Cat. He takes 20% of their earnings. So for an example, when Grumpy Cat made an estimated $1 million in her first year, he would have made $200,000 for just one client. Water slide testers travel from North America to places like Egypt to go to water parks and test their slides. They rate them based on the biggest splash and the adrenaline factor, then post their opinions online. Their yearly salary is $34,000. The China Giant Panda Protection and Research Center posted a job online called the Panda Nanny. You have to spend 365 days a year with a panda, but you get free meals and an SUV on top of the $32,000 salary. The only requirements are that you have to be 22 years or older and have basic knowledge of pandas. Kids who remember their past lives. Sam Taylor is a boy who was born shortly after his grandfather passed away, and in his first year he already had memories of his grandfather's life. He even said to his father, "I remember when I used to change your diapers," when Sam's father was changing his. Shanae is a boy who was born with 2 birthmarks on his head. From the age of 3, he started having memories of his past life as a teacher, who was killed by a gunshot to the head. James Leininger is a kid who started having nightmares at the age of 2, about his past life as a World War II pilot. He claimed that in his past life he was the pilot James Houston, who was shot down in action in the Pacific Ocean.
I bet you won't be able to find me in this group of people. I'm not there right now, but I'm about to be. But what I want you guys to do is close your eyes, and I'm gonna count down from 3, then open them and look for me. All right, 3, make sure your eyes are closed. 2, last warning. 1, keep your eyes closed, and I'm gonna tell you when to open them. Okay, try and find me. I'm gonna give you a few more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Here I am, baby. You can only like and subscribe if you found me. If these places were not filmed, no one would believe they exist. This skywalk in China is an artificial waterfall with a walkway that serves as a lookout for up to 3,000 people. It's 500 meters in the air and it cost around $40 million to make. It also offers a night show with about 2,000 lights that light up the platform and the waterfall. From the sky, this phenomenon is an optical illusion that looks like the island of Mauritius is going to be dragged into the sea. But all it is an effect from the flow of the underwater currents. On this beach in Iceland, the thing that sticks out the most is the black sand. It comes from lava that flows through the ocean, which hardens it and turns it black as it cools down. Bolivia has the largest salt flat in the world, which is about 4,000 miles long. The surface reflects the sky as if it was a giant mirror. This kung fu master appeared on a TV show in Hawaii. He showed how he could break concrete blocks with a glass. But when the show host went to the next block, he wanted to show the audience how hard the bricks were. But he accidentally broke it by tapping on it because he thought it was made out of a harder material. These are people who expose themselves on live TV. Let's continue. The show Inside Edition wanted to catch a fraud who said that she could read minds. So they invited her onto the show to try and solve an unsolved case. Then the man showed her a picture of a girl and he said it was his missing sister. The lady then charged him $400 and after said that the girl in the picture is no longer alive. Right after this, Inside Edition's host exposed her by saying the girl in the picture was actually her when she was younger. Peter Popoff claimed to take away people's illnesses. He would have a large crowd, then call out a random person and tell them their name and what was affecting them. But one time, someone brought in a radio scanner and discovered that he actually had a small earpiece in his ear. His wife would talk to him through it and tell him the name, address, and illness of his audience members. He was called out about this on The Tonight Show, and after that, he went bankrupt.
Photos you'll have to look at twice. At first it looks like a girl making a weird face, but she's actually sleeping and that's just a magazine. This lady giving a speech looks like she's floating on a magic carpet, but the shadow is just from a flag. It looks like this boy playing soccer has a ponytail, but it's actually the hair from someone behind him. It looks like this dog is cut in half, but it's actually just laying beside a log. It looks like this girl's kissing a boy with a big head, but the person she's kissing is actually behind him. Photos with disturbing backstories. This photo was taken in 1986, just before NASA sent these 7 explorers into space on the Space Shuttle Challenger. However, a few seconds before takeoff, the shuttle exploded and killed the explorers. To this day, it's unknown if Princess Diana died from an accident or if someone planned it. This photo was taken in Paris just before the crash that caused her death. In 2015, this plane from TransAsia Airways crashed in Taiwan minutes after this photo was taken. The plane was carrying 58 passengers and ended up crashing into the Keelung River. The pilot said he pulled back the throttle on the wrong side and accidentally shut off the only working engine. This error resulted in 43 deaths and 15 injuries. This photo was taken in Thailand in 2004, right before an earthquake caused a tsunami that reached 100 feet high, and more than 200,000 people died.
Past and present technology, then and now. The first ever mechanical calculator was built in between 1851 and 1915. It could perform the 4 basic operations: addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. Today's calculators aren't mechanical, they're electronic, and they can complete all sorts of mathematical problems within seconds. The first ever cell phone weighed over 2 pounds and costed $4,000. It could only be used for 30 minutes and then it would take 10 hours to charge. Today, an iPhone 13 weighs 0.38 pounds and costs around $800. It charges in 1.5 hours and the battery can last approximately 20 hours. The first TV was mechanical and appeared in 1920. Models B and C consisted of cabinets with a small display, and it could barely reach 30 lines per frame. Today's TVs have digital technology and have a resolution of up to 8K, which is 33.2 megapixels per frame or 175 times more than the first ever TV. Rules that presidents have to follow. Every single letter that they get in the mail or an email or even a phone call has to be approved by the Secret Service first. After becoming president, they will never be able to drive themselves again unless it's on private property, even if you're a former president. If they want to go somewhere, they'll either have to be driven by an escort or the Secret Service. They're also never allowed to be alone again. So if they want to go for a walk or go to the store to grab something quickly, the Secret Service will have to go with them. They will also get their own library, and in that library will be transcripts of everything they've ever said to the public.
Scammers who got caught in the act. In China, people trying to scam drivers is common. In this video, a man was driving down a narrow road when suddenly a lady walked into the middle of the road and laid down, and then waits for the vehicle to get close to her so she pretends that she's been hit. But the driver put the car in reverse, then the lady got off the ground and tried to dent the front of the vehicle, then lay back down. If the man didn't have the dash cam, they may have thought he actually hit her. In this video, a man's driving along when suddenly a car pulls out in front of him and zigzags to try and cause a minor collision. The car then stops and a group of men get out, blocking the driver from continuing. The way the scam works is the men try and get the guy's insurance details so they can claim money from the company for supposedly being hit. But when the driver tells them that they're being recorded, they just walk away and try and find their next victim.
Random acts of kindness that will make your day. This guy ran as fast as he could to get the baseball that went into the stands. I was super excited when he got it, but he noticed a little girl was there, so he decided to give it to her instead. This vehicle pulled out in front of someone on a motorcycle going really fast, but luckily he managed to dodge it. Instead of the man in the vehicle driving off, he decided to stop to make sure the biker was okay.
Sorry.
Very sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for stopping, sir.
Yes.
You have a good Memorial Day.
Are you sure you're okay?
I'm positive, thank you.
This person's vehicle stopped working in the middle of a tunnel, so they got out and started to push it. When suddenly, someone on a motorcycle came, then another one came, and together they used their feet to push the vehicle out without even getting off the motorcycle. Rihanna's sign language interpreter went viral for her Super Bowl performance. Justina Miles is a 20-year-old nursing student from Philadelphia. She performed during the pre-shows as well, but her performance during the halftime show is what went viral.
Secret messages hidden in popular logos. In the FedEx logo, there's an arrow in between the E and the X. It stands for moving forward, speed, and precision. In the Amazon logo, there's an orange arrow that goes from A to Z, and this means they have you covered for every letter in the alphabet. In the Tostitos logo, the 2 lowercase t's represent people holding a chip, and the I is a table holding a bowl of salsa. In the Hershey's Kisses logo, the space in between the K and the I is shaped as one of their chocolates. In the Pringles logo, the dot on the I is actually a chip. The B in this logo doesn't just represent beets, but also someone wearing a pair of headphones.
Strange food combinations that people swear by. First up, we have vanilla ice cream and soy sauce. The salty soy sauce mixed with sweet ice cream apparently creates a caramel-like flavor. But if you're trying this, just go easy on the soy sauce. Next is Dr. Pepper and peanuts. This combo is popular in Texas and other parts in the South. You may not think it's too strange until I tell you that the peanuts go inside the Dr. Pepper. So that way every sip you take comes with a salty surprise. If you thought pineapples on pizza was controversial, wait until you hear about bananas on pizza. In Sweden, people love to load up their pizza with anything and everything that they can imagine. And one of their most popular combos is the curry banana pizza. Finally, we have peanut butter and pickle sandwich. This combo originates from the Great Depression when food was hard to get. 2 foods that were cheap and easy to find were pickles and peanut butter. The 3 craziest military training exercises. Cobra Gold consists of drinking the blood from a decapitated cobra. This exercise is usually done by the military forces of Thailand. They do this because cobra blood is a good substitute for water to keep you hydrated. In the target shooting exercise, the Russian elite forces must be shot by their commander, which goes directly in their chest, but of course with the protection of a bulletproof vest. The goal of this is to develop trust with the other soldiers and to get used to gunfire in high pressure situations. Hot grenade is like the game Hot Potato, but in this case, the soldiers use a live grenade, passing it from hand to hand. Once the detonation signal goes off, they have to throw the grenade into a hole in front of them to avoid getting hurt. This training exercise is most common in the Chinese military. Someone was leaving this girl strange notes at 3 a.m, so she set up a camera to catch them. A girl named Jessie from North Carolina began feeling someone's presence as if she was being followed. She then began to see notes around her apartment with handwriting that wasn't hers, which confirmed to her that someone might actually be following her. The notes contained little reminders of tasks that Jessie had to complete, but who was writing them? To find out, she set up a camera in her house to record everything, but unfortunately she didn't catch anything. So she decided to share everything that was happening with her on Reddit, and lots of people told her to go to the doctor. She decided to go, and when she got there, the doctor told her to put a carbon monoxide sensor in her room. After she installed it, the device was giving a reading of 100 ppm, which basically means that her symptoms and visions were due to carbon monoxide poisoning, since it deprives the brain of oxygen, making people hallucinate.
This teen saw a lady steal from a blind man, and here's what he did. Joey Prusak started working at Dairy Queen when he was 14 years old. Eventually, at the age of 17, he began working full-time. And 3 months before he graduated, he got promoted to store manager. In 2013, a blind man came into the store and accidentally dropped a $20 bill onto the ground without noticing. The lady behind him picked up the bill and put it in her pocket. Joey then asked her to give back the money, but she said it was hers. He then said if she didn't give it back, she would be kicked out of the store. So she gave the bill to Joey, and he went to find the blind man and gave it back to him. He then continued working like normal. Another customer in line seen him do this and decided to reward him with $20 of her own. More people tried doing this as the story went viral, but Joey always declines the money because he says he was just doing what he felt was right. The 5 most unusual prisons. In Bolivia's San Pedro prison, each prisoner has to pay for their cell. Each one is between $1,000 and $1,500. And to get the money, they have to work. That's why the prison is full of restaurants and small markets. In Norway, there's an eco-friendly prison. Everything is recycled, solar panels are used, and most of the food is produced. The prison actually looks more like a summer camp because you could play tennis, swim, and go horseback riding. The Alcatraz prison was a small island in San Francisco. It's almost impossible to escape because you would have to go through concrete walls, the rocky coastline, and swim through the freezing cold water. In Cebu prison in the Philippines, prisoners dance as part of their exercise program, and there's actually a viral video where they dance to Michael Jackson's Thriller. Finally, there's a prison in Austria that holds prisoners who don't require maximum security. The prisoners even wear their own clothes, cook their own food, and live a fairly normal life. The 10 scariest McDonald's Happy Meals. Number 1, the collection of Disney's Dinosaur series released in 1992. Number 2, Ronald McDonald's Mask released in 1963. Number 3, Food Basics set released in 1992. Number 4, Rude Minions from 2015. These minions were created to speak in their language Mignonese, but the phrase they pronounced sounded like a swear word, so they were removed from the market. Number 5, Tickle Feather, a tickle sponge from 1978. Number 6, Skydancer set released in 1996. Number 7, the Rasputin doll from the Disney movie Anastasia released in 1997. Number 8, the character of the Hamburglar brand in the Halloween edition released in 1998. Number 9, Medusa from DreamWorks movie Shark Tale, released in 2004. The shape of the toy wasn't really similar to a jellyfish, and even though the children didn't realize it, the parents were alarmed by the shape, so McDonald's decided to get rid of it. And number 10, a Play-Doh set to create food in a McDonald's restaurant. The pieces were really small and children ate them. Most Happy Meal toys are intended for children under the age of 3, but not this one. The biggest thing you missed in Squid Game. Just to warn you, there are spoilers. One of the biggest twists in the show is that the old man was in charge of the games, and there was lots of clues to show this that most people missed. For starters, that's the reason why he was player number 1. That's why he was the only old person in the game. That's why he wasn't surprised when people started getting shot in the first game. That's why he knew how to win tug-of-war, and that's why the neighborhood in the marble game looked like the neighborhood he grew up in. But that's not all. When the robot was scanning people in red light, green light, it didn't pick up the old man as a player. His name translated into English is number 1 man. This is why he basically convinced player 456 to re-enter the game, and this is why he was the only player to not get gassed when he entered the van to go back to the game.
The funniest 911 calls made by kids. This kid was having trouble doing subtraction, so he called 911 to ask for help.
911 emergency.
Yeah, I need some help.
What's the matter?
With my math.
Was it your mouth?
No, it's my math. I have to do it.
You would think the officer would get mad or just hang up, but he decided to stay on the call and help.
What kind of math do you have that you need help with?
I have takeaways.
Oh, you got to do the takeaways?
Yeah.
All right, what's the problem?
You have to help me with my math.
Okay, tell me what the math is.
Okay, 16.
Yeah.
takeaway 8.
Uh-huh.
This way.
You tell me, how much do you think it is?
I know 1.
No.
A little while later, you could hear the boy's mom ask him what he's doing on the phone.
Sonny, what are you doing? Just playing that off of me right now. What did I tell you about playing on the phone?
Your mother.
The car says that. I didn't mean to police.
This is the luckiest man alive. Frank Selleck was riding a train when it went off the tracks into a river. 17 passengers died, but he was able to swim to shore with nothing but a broken arm. The next year when he was on a plane, a door detached from the aircraft and it crashed. 19 people died, but Selleck was found in a haystack with a few bruises. In 1996, he was on a bus when it drove into a river. 4 people died, but again he survived. In 1970, his car's fuel tank exploded on the highway. In 1973, his fuel tank leaked and his car caught on fire. Fast forward to 1995 and he was in another bus crash. The next year when he was driving, a truck came barreling towards him. He jumped out of his vehicle and watched it explode.
The luckiest moments ever caught on camera. When this man was walking on the sidewalk, he thought he stepped on something, so he stopped to take a look at his shoe. And good thing he did, because only a couple seconds later, a giant pane of glass fell inches from his head. Luckily, he was unharmed, but if he didn't stop to take a look at his shoe, he might have got hit. This lady was sitting outside by her pool and talking to her son when you can hear a tree start to crack, so the boy yells at his mom to run and she jumped into action. This man was standing way too close to the train tracks and he didn't know that a train was coming. But luckily at the last second he turned around and saw it, so he jumped out of the way.
The luckiest people caught on camera. One night, these two guys were imitating the UFC fighter Conor McGregor. Then a vehicle stopped and rolled down the window to talk to them, and it coincidentally turned out to be Conor McGregor. During a biking race, one of the riders fell off of his bike, which made him lose the lead by quite a bit. Then he got up and quickly started going again. I managed to pass the riders to take the lead again and win the race. During a basketball game, Russell Westbrook missed a dunk but managed to get an extremely lucky bounce. This guy decided to sled down a hill, but he didn't know that it led to a road where 2 vehicles were passing by. Luckily, he managed to miss them both. The most brutal military drills. South Korea's elite army has to go into freezing water that's minus 30 degrees for training, and for 9 days they have to do combat training in the snow at extreme temperatures. In North Korea, the training's also brutal. One of their daily activities is to hit a piece of wood wrapped in rope 5,000 times and hit blocks of salt with their bleeding fists to make the muscles in their hands stronger. Part of the Chinese army training consists of wooden sticks being smashed on their backs, concrete blocks bursting in their arms, plates being broke over their heads, and being hit in the head and stomach with a hammer. Finally, military members from different countries have participated in this training exercise, where they have to drink snake blood and eat live animals. This training is a survival course for them to learn how to survive in extreme conditions. These are the most dangerous roads in the world. At just 12 feet long, this narrow road in Bolivia is always surrounded by rain and fog and loses 200 to 300 people per year. Just one wrong turn and you're falling 4,000 to 15,000 feet to the ground. This 800-mile road by the border of Pakistan and China is terrifying because of its natural disasters, including landslides, avalanches, heavy snow, and flooding. From the construction alone, nearly 1,000 workers passed away from landslides. This road in Norway was hit by a dozen windstorms during its construction in the 1980s. When storms begin to pick up, the road becomes filled with water, making it unsafe for people driving.
The most insane Guinness World Records of all time. In 2015, 55-year-old Gio Bingo set the world record for the most bees on a body at one time. The total weight of all the bees was 238 pounds and he got bit over 2,000 times. Laso Schaller broke the record for the highest altitude jump into water. The height was 190 feet in the air, which is just a little bit taller than the Tower of Pisa. He decided to set the record at a waterfall and his top speed was 123 kilometers per hour, which is 76 miles per hour. And finally, we have Walter Orthman. When he was just 15 years old, he started working as a shipping assistant. He's now 100 years old and still working at the same place, which is how he set the record for spending 84 years at a single company. And I actually learned about this man on Morning Brew, which is a free newsletter that emails you trending stories Monday through Sunday that you can read in 5 minutes or less. Just press the link in the comments to subscribe for free today. This is the most expensive bottle of water in the world. I'm most likely going to pronounce this wrong, but it's called Acqua di Cristallo Tributo Amada Gillini, and in 2010 it sold at an auction for over $80,000. The water is sourced from 3 different locations: water springs in Fiji and France, and glaciers in Iceland. These places have some of the cleanest water on the earth. It comes in a 750 milliliter glass bottle with an elaborate design by famed bottle designer Fernando Altamirano. The entire thing is coated in solid 24 karat gold. There's even gold inside of the water, which makes it more alkaline and, of course, way more expensive. All of the proceeds from the auction went to organizations fighting climate change, and 12 years later it still holds the world record for the most expensive bottle of water.
Here's the only way to survive a grenade blast. The first thing you want to do is turn the other direction and get at least 15 feet away. Then lay on your stomach with the bottom of your feet pointing at the grenade. This will reduce your chances of getting hit by the fragments. But if you do get hit, it will be the bottom of your shoes instead of your skin. Now if there's a grenade in the water with you, don't swim deeper, get out. Swimming deeper will cause the blast of the grenade to compress your lungs and cause serious damage.
The police didn't take this lady seriously, and what happened next will shock you. Michael and Shauna had been dating for 2 years, but soon Shauna realized that their relationship was turning into a toxic one. He would always tell her what to do and not let her decide for herself. She then started talking to Cook, who was her ex-boyfriend. Shauna had regained her happiness by talking to Cook, so she broke up with Michael. But then Michael started following her around and begging her to get back together with him. She tried to avoid him, but he kept showing up at stores and restaurants that she was at. One day when she was cleaning her bike, she found a tracking device, so she decided to file a police report against Michael. But the cops didn't do anything about it. Michael started threatening Shauna in person and on the phone. So she called the cops again, but instead of taking action, they made her pay a fine for wasting their time. One day when Shauna was home alone, Michael broke in and took her life. If the police would have taken her seriously, she may still be alive.
This is the smartest scam in history, and you won't believe how he did it. A con artist decided he wanted to build a skyscraper in Texas. On the blueprint, he put it was going to be 480 tall. He didn't specify whether it was 480 centimeters, inches, or feet. So the investors just assumed that he meant 480 feet tall and invested $200,000, which is around $3 million today. He did make the skyscraper, but it was only 4 stories high and 480 inches tall. Then he kept the rest of the money for himself. The investors decided to bring him to court, but the judge decided that the investors got exactly what they signed for and the man got to keep the money.
This is not the same person, it's 2 different people. But they're both the same height, which is 6'4". They both have red hair and beards. They both wear the same glasses, but the craziest part is, they have the exact same name, Brady Feigl. And you're probably thinking, why would their parents name them the exact same thing when they look so similar? Well, they're actually not brothers. They even did a DNA test, and it turns out they're not even related at all. This is the story of the Hope Diamond, which ruined its owners' lives. The Diamond of Hope is a beautiful looking gem, but it's said to bring bad things to whoever that wears it. Jean-Baptiste Tavernier was the first owner of this gem, but as soon as he got it, he had non-stop fevers that didn't go away until he sold it to King Louis of France. Then Louis decided to bring it to his jeweler and asked him if he could make it into a necklace that he could wear on special occasions. But a little while after the necklace was ready, he passed away due to not getting enough blood flow to the brain. The jewel was then passed on to his wife, who used to wear it every single day. But after the outbreak of the French Revolution, she was executed by the guillotine. Years later, the owner was Abdul Hamid II, who was a Turkish king, but his life changed for the worse shortly after he started wearing it. Due to the military revolution of the Young Turks, he was overthrown as king and spent his last days in prison.
The strangest things found on beaches. In 2016, thousands of snowballs were found on a beach in Siberia. It's said that they were formed from wind and cold weather. It's the first time something like this has ever happened and probably the last. If you've ever thought about sending a message in a bottle, somebody already did 101 years ago. A German fisherman found a message and actually managed to get it to the daughter of the sender. Although it looks like something out of a movie, a robotic hand was found on a beach near New York, and no one really knows where it came from. And if that one wasn't strange enough, a dinosaur bone was found on a beach in Washington. Scientists analyzed it and said it could be from a T-Rex or a Velociraptor, and it's estimated to be around 80 million years old. And finally, the creepiest one of all. Between 2007 and 2008, multiple feet were found still in shoes on the beaches in Canada. In total, 7 feet were found and there's still no explanation. The worst school punishments. In 2011, a teacher from Albuquerque called the police because a student burped in class. The boy was then taken to juvenile prison for testing. Christopher Baker, who was a 9-year-old student from Kentucky, was put in a duffel bag for misbehaving in class. The school claimed that he was in the therapy bag for almost 20 minutes. Due to the mother's claims, the teachers involved were fired. At a school in New Jersey, a student accidentally spilled water on the lunchroom floor. When the assistant principal saw the incident, she forced 16 students to eat their lunch on the floor for 10 days. When the parents found out, they sued the school, winning $500,000. Finally, a 5-year-old from Pennsylvania received a 10-day suspension for wanting to shoot her Hello Kitty bubble gun at another student. She said, "I'll shoot you, you shoot me, and we'll play together." After the teacher heard the conversation, she sent her to the principal's office. And even though she just had a bubble gun, she was suspended for a terroristic threat.
Things with misleading names. Even though the word nut is in the name, peanuts are a legume, like peas and beans. The lead in lead pencils is actually a mix of graphite graphite and clay. French fries originated in Belgium, and the French horn originated in Germany. Pork butt is a cut of meat that comes from a pig's shoulder. Fireflies are actually beetles, and guinea pigs are actually rodents. Finally, white chocolate isn't really chocolate because it contains no solid part of the cocoa bean.
Things you didn't know about Squid Game. The symbols on the soldiers' masks were inspired by the organization of ant colonies, therefore dividing them into a circle for the workers, a triangle for the soldiers, and a square for the people in charge. The phone number they used on the invitations card to the game belonged to a real business. When the series became popular, thousands of people started phoning that number and asking to join the game. So to solve this, Netflix had to edit the number. The players never realized that the games they would be playing were in front of their eyes the whole time. Each game was painted in order on the wall of the bedroom. The stairs that led the players to the game room and back were inspired by the artwork of a Dutch artist named MC Esther. They actually used 456 people to film the first game, since they didn't want to use a computer-generated image. Finally, the script for Squid Game was created in 2008, but was rejected by several producers before being accepted by Netflix 2 decades later.
5 close calls caught on camera. This man is cleaning the snow off of his car when he hears something, so he looks up. He manages to get out of the way just as an 8-foot block of concrete falls onto his car. This car is stopped in traffic when a man exits from the passenger side. The man then runs across the street without checking the bus lane and nearly gets hit. This young gymnast attempts a stunt, but loses balance and falls during a flip. Luckily, her coach is waiting in the wings and manages to catch her just in time. This family of ducks is trying to safely cross the road when it appears like a car runs them over. Incredibly, none of the ducks were hit and they managed to make it to the other side safely. Finally, this man was on a hike when he came across a baby bobcat. What he didn't know is the mom was close by. The bobcat stalked the hiker for around 6 minutes and kept aggressively lunging towards him until it eventually ran off.
3 Secret Service tactics that are insane. The president's main way of transportation is called the Beast. It's a Cadillac limousine with over 7 tons of armor, which is 8 inches thick. It can defend against gunfire and explosives, but it never travels alone. In the line of vehicles, there's a black van that holds the counter assault team, and in total there's 12 vehicles that each cost over $1 million. When chefs are cooking food for the president, every single one of their movements is monitored by an agent to make sure they're not poisoning the food. When the president travels, chefs go with him to personally prepare his food. He doesn't eat any food that's gifted to him, and when he buys food at a restaurant, he doesn't actually eat it. It's usually just for a photo. The president gets lots of online threats, and even if it's just a joke, they investigate every single aspect of that person's life. Their neighbors, friends, and employees can all be interviewed. They do this to see how serious the threat is, then decide if they need to take action on the person or not. 3 times actors weren't acting. In the movie It, all the actors who played the kids decided they didn't want to see what Pennywise the Clown looked like until they started filming. So in this scene, their reactions were actually real because it was the first time they were seeing him. In the movie Jaws, they didn't tell the actor who was getting attacked first that there would be a machine pulling them underwater. So all of her screams and panicking were real. In the movie Now You See Me, the actor Isla Fisher performed all her stunts herself. There was one trick where she had to be chained underwater in a tank and try to escape. In the scene, she struggled trying to get out of the chains and it looked like she was drowning, which is what was actually happening in real life and not just in the movie. A stuntman thought it was going on for too long, so got her out, which saved her life.
5 rare photos that you've never seen before. This is what an upside down glacier looks like. This car door handle froze overnight and made a cool design. Here's what the sunset looks like from space. Here's a bird singing when it's cold out. And finally, here's what the back of the Mona Lisa looks like.
5 places you should never swim. The boiling lake in Dominica is so dangerous that the magma underneath the surface makes the water so hot that you would be swimming in boiling water. Lake Karachay is one of the most toxic lakes on Earth, due to all the toxic waste that the Russian government introduced when toxic materials weren't as big of a problem. The Nile River is filled with crocodiles everywhere that could kill you, and if you manage to escape the crocodiles, you'll have snakes as a second problem. In the river and outside of it, you could probably find at least 15 venomous species. Jacob's Well is a lake located in Texas where you could dive really deep, but you have to be careful because there's caves below where people can get trapped. And lastly, Hanakape Beach has currents so strong that they even keep count of how many deaths there's been to scare people, and the number of people killed is 80. This 12-year-old spotted a creepy man outside of her window. In 2015, Taylor Blanton was home alone while she was waiting for her mom to come home from work. She was playing games on her phone when she spotted a man walking around their neighborhood. He was walking around as if he was lost, so she figured he wasn't from there. The girl didn't help him because she didn't know who he was, so she figured she would let one of her neighbors help him. But then he walked into her yard. She then heard banging noises on her door, but it didn't sound like knocking. It was much louder, which is when she realized he was trying to break in. After a few minutes, he couldn't get in, so he tried to find another way. He went to their garage and tried getting in there, which is when she started recording the man through her bedroom window. Then she got into her closet and called 911, but by the time the cops got there, he was gone. Since she took a video, they were able to find the man a couple blocks away, and it turns out the man is a career criminal who is linked to other burglaries in the neighborhood.
This farmer gets revenge on people for illegally parking on his lot. Deveo Bedakovic owned a large field near the village center, and a market had just opened near his farmhouse. But the market didn't have a parking lot, so people started parking on his field. And at first, he didn't mind since it was just a few people, but as the weeks went on, more and more people started parking there to the point where he couldn't do any work. He decided to go and ask the people if they could park somewhere else. Everyone agreed with him and left, but when he wasn't outside, more people parked there. He's a busy man, so he couldn't be there all day telling people not to park there, and at one point he got so mad that he considered slashing people's tires. He also considered building a fence, but it would have cost too much money. So he decided to get on his tractor and plow the dirt around the vehicles, creating trenches. When people tried to leave, some of them got stuck in the mud, and one lady got so mad that she called the police. When they got there, people were saying that the farmer should be arrested. But in the end, the police said that since it's his private property, he could do whatever he wants, and if he wanted, he could even press charges for trespassing.
Gadgets that give you superpowers. MYO is a bracelet made by Telmic Labs. It allows you to control your electronics with simple gestures. The sensors detect the movements in your arm muscles, and some of its functions are you can control the volume of your music, you can control drones, and you could also play games without the joystick. If you've ever wanted to throw fire with your hands, you can with the Pyro Mini Flamethrower. You put it on your wrist and it lets you throw sparks, flames, and fireballs. It does this by quickly burning tissue. The exoskeleton is a full bodysuit. It has integrated weapons, it's bulletproof, it increases your mobility and strength by taking the stress off your joints and muscles, which even allows people in wheelchairs to stand up and walk. Here's how a vending machine actually works. When you place a coin in the machine, light sensors determine the size and electromagnets detect the metal type to identify the coins, then source them into columns. And if it's a fake, it goes into the reject chute. When it needs to give change, it releases one coin carefully at a time into the chute. When you press a key, a computer orders one of the 32 motors to turn the spiral 360 degrees. Then as the snack falls, it hits a line of 10 infrared beams. If nothing crosses the beams, then the computer orders the coils to turn another 360 degrees until something does. This man swam in a cave but never returned, and a few years later the police found out the shocking truth. After going through financial difficulty and being $50,000 in debt, Ben McDonald needed an escape from reality. He decided to go explore the caves at a nearby park called Vortex Spring. Even though a certificate was required to go cave diving, he jumped in the water in the restricted zone anyway, and 2 of the park employees seen him go into it, but he wasn't spotted at his house for the next 2 days. His truck was still parked outside of the park with his wallet in it, and none of his neighbors had seen him. The local authorities began a search and rescue in the entire park, but after weeks of searching they still hadn't found anything, so they called an expert cave diver named Ed Sorensen. The police were sure he would find his body because he was diving deeper than they had gone before, but he couldn't find anything and the case was classed as an unsolved mystery, until a few years later when a park employee was mysteriously murdered. Apparently he had heard information about Ben's disappearance, which was actually a murder. The reason why none of Ben's remains were found is because they were removed from the crime scene, and the 2 park employees were paid by someone to leave before Ben returned to the surface. Many people believe he was killed because he got into illegal activity trying to pay off his debt. A mom brought her little girl to the skate park, but it was full of teenage boys, and what happens next will shock you. This little girl wanted to go skateboarding for months. Her mom had to convince her that it wasn't just for boys. When they drove to the skate park and it was full of teenage boys smoking and swearing, she wanted to go home. The mom secretly wanted to go home too, because she didn't want to have to yell at the boys. When the girl said, "Mom, it's full of older boys," she replied with, "So what? They don't own the skate park." The girl decided to go down a ramp, even though the boys were grinding rails and flying by her. She was only there for a couple minutes when a boy came up to her and said, "Hey, excuse me." Her mom got ready to use her mom voice on him, but then she heard him say, "Your feet are wrong, can I help you?" He then spent an hour teaching the little girl how to ride, even though his friends were making fun of him. In this 100-meter hurdle, an athlete from Cuba broke a world record, but it was a really close race between him and the athlete beside him from China. Everyone thought that the guy from Cuba won, but when you look at the replay in slow motion, you can see the guy from Cuba pushing the guy from China. This swimmer named Sun Hang, who has a bad reputation of being rude to opponents, said this. After this, he was later found guilty of taking out-of-competition substances and was banned from the Olympics for 8 years. A figure skater got attacked by a random man when she got off of the ice. He used a baton to injure her leg. It was later found out that the person who did this was another figure skater's husband. His wife said she had nothing to do with it, but she was fined $100,000. In this video, a guy tries to place a massive 75-inch TV in the back of his car. After realizing that it won't fit, he tries to place it through the back seat, but then he again realizes that there's no way it's gonna fit. So in the end, he decides to place the TV on top of his car and then just drives away. This McDonald's worker paid for her family's meal after the mom forgot her wallet, and the way she repays him will shock you. When Brittany was driving her 3 kids home from football, her youngest kid started crying because he was hungry. So she decided to go to McDonald's and get everyone food. When she got to the drive-thru, she ordered, then pulled up to the first window to pay. But then she noticed she forgot her wallet. She then looked up to the McDonald's worker with tears in her eyes because she was so stressed, and told him to cancel her order. The worker was a 16-year-old kid named Wyatt. Without even thinking, he pulled out his wallet and paid for the family's food. The family later found out that he was saving up money to buy a car, and the way they repay him will shock you, but before I tell you how, my merch just released today. If you want to support me and get some sick looking clothes while you're at it, just press a link in the comments to check it out. The family set up a GoFundMe page, and it raised over $50,000. Photos you'll have to look at twice. At first it looks like they're on a really thin edge, but if you tilt your phone, they're all just laying down. At first it looks like this boy has big arms, but it's actually just somebody behind him. This looks like an eyeball, but it's actually just water going down a drain. It looks like this dog's cut in half, but his fur is just blending in with the carpet. I've been looking at this picture for 20 minutes and I still can't figure it out, so let me know in the comments. Photos you're not allowed to see. You're not allowed to go into Area 51, but a pilot named Gabriel Ziefman broke those rules and flew over top. He took this photo in 2020 and it's the best one we have. Cameras have always been banned in the Supreme Court, but in 1932, Eric Sullivan snuck in a camera. He pretended to have a broken arm and hid his camera inside the cast. 5 years later, there was another photo taken. A lady cut a hole in her purse and put a small camera in it. Since 1878, the most powerful people in the world meet at this forest in California, where they do lots of ceremonies and rituals. This includes presidents, billionaires, and business people. But a photographer named Gabriel Moulon snuck in and took a picture of them doing a ritual. Photos you're not supposed to see. Here's what the Teletubbies look like without their heads. Here's where the picture on the Cliff Bar was taken. Here's what a magic 8-ball really looks like. Here's what a ramen noodle cup looks like on the inside. And here's how pineapples are grown. 3 places you can't go and people who went there anyway. The Catacombs of Paris is the largest underground cemetery in the world. It was built in the 18th century and is filled with the bones of over 6 million people. Although it's illegal to explore it, some people have gone there and got lost forever. Nuku Hiva Island was home to Henry Haiti, who was a cannibal who attacked a couple of tourists who didn't know that he lived there. Unfortunately, the man was cooked and eaten by him, but the woman survived. A little while later, the cannibal was caught and sentenced to 28 years in prison. In 2019, a 14-year-old boy named Harley Dilly decided to enter an abandoned house after having an argument with his parents. While trying to enter from the chimney, the boy got stuck and was unable to get out, then unfortunately passed away due to the lack of air. His body was then found a month later. She had an itch in her nose, so she went to the hospital, then discovered something horrifying. Daniela Lavarni is a 24-year-old from Scotland, and she loves traveling to foreign countries. She decided her next trip would be to Asia. Her first stop was in Vietnam, but when she was there, she got into a motorcycle accident. Luckily, she wasn't badly hurt, but shortly after, she noticed an itch in her nose. Then a few hours later, her nose started to bleed. A few days later, she flew back to Scotland, but the itches and nosebleeds didn't stop. One day, when she got out of the shower, she looked in the mirror and there's a big blob coming out of her nose that went all the way down to her lip. So she immediately went to the hospital. After half an hour and a lot of pain, the doctors managed to pull out a leech from her nose. The doctor said it most likely got into her body from contaminated drinking water during her trip, then grew by feeding off of her blood. Shocking facts you didn't know about the Minions. Although there's too many of them to count, there's 3 main characters, Kevin, Stuart, and Bob, and they all have the same voice played by the voice actor Pierre Coffin. Believe it or not, he made 899 different voices for the Minions movie. If you wanted to know what the Minions say, you would have to translate every word separately, because the language they speak is a mixture of a whole bunch of different languages, including Italian, French, Spanish, and English. The creators of the Minion movies made over 400 different and unique Minions, so they wouldn't all be copy and paste. The Minions were inspired from the Oompa Loompas, from the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory movie, and also the Jawas from Star Wars. Finally, the creators were also inspired from the Looney Tunes character Tweety to create the evil Minions, because Tweety drank a potion and turned into a monster to trap Sylvester. If the first thing you do after you wake up in the morning is grab your phone, then watch this video. When you grab your phone first thing in the morning, it makes you stay in bed scrolling on what you missed while you were asleep, instead of using this time to get a good start to your present day. Next, you'll want to make your bed, and I know lots of people think this is dumb because they're just going to go back in it later that night, but when you make your bed in the morning, it gives you your first accomplishment of the day, which makes you feel better and want to do another one. Next, you can either have something to eat or skip this part if you're not hungry in the mornings, but just try not to eat anything sugary. By doing some sort of exercise in the morning, it wakes your body up, and I don't mean you have to run a marathon. Even just doing a few stretches loosens up your body and makes it feel better for the day.
day. Next, it's time to meditate. Just close your eyes for 10 to 15 minutes and focus on your breathing. Over 50% of billionaires meditate in the morning. And lastly, write down 3 things that you want to accomplish in that day. It will make you focus on doing those 3 things rather than doing things that aren't productive. Obviously, you don't have to do everything I just said, but if you're looking for a better morning routine, then this is a good way to start.
The craziest things found by airport security. In an Amsterdam airport, 200 bags of tarantulas were found. In 2015, a child was found in a suitcase that belonged to a 19-year-old girl traveling from Morocco to Spain. A couple from India were arrested at the airport for smuggling small bars of pure gold that they glued to their feet. At Shanghai airport, they opened a suitcase that contained live snakes, and in total there was 121 of them. 2 women were arrested at Liverpool airport for attempting to transport the body of a dead relative in a wheelchair. And finally, a tiger cub was found in the suitcase of a Thai woman traveling to Iran. She tried to make them think it was a stuffed animal because there were other stuffed animals in the suitcase. But in the end, the woman was arrested and the tiger was taken for special care. The disturbing secret behind this mannequin will give you goosebumps. In 1930, a bridal shop owner put a new mannequin and dress in the display window. Everyone who walked by it would stop and take a look at it because they all thought it looked way too real. The daughter of the shop's owner was about to get married in one of the gowns from the shop, but on the day of her wedding, she got bit by a venomous black widow spider. She got really sick and couldn't attend her wedding, and before the day was over, she unfortunately passed away. When her father placed the mannequin in the window, people started getting weird feelings in their stomach because of how similar the mannequin looked to his daughter. Many people think that he preserved her body and used it as the mannequin. When the owners sold the store, the new owners kept the mannequin. Many tourists go to the store just to look at the mannequin. A worker that changes the gown 2 times a week said that she starts to sweat when she goes near it, and that she's seen enough of the body to know that it's not your average mannequin. The hands look extremely real and there's even veins on her legs. Customers have even said that she moves when you're not looking, but nothing has ever been proven that it's not just a mannequin. The ending of this sad story will shock you. A man married a beautiful girl that he loved very much. One day she developed a skin disease, which made her slowly lose her beauty. The next day her husband left for a tour. When he was returning, he got into an accident and lost his eyesight. But their married life continued like usual. As the days passed, she lost her beauty even more. But since the man was blind, he didn't know this, and continued to love her. But one day she suddenly passed away. The man was very sad and wanted to leave the town, but someone asked him, "How will you be able to walk alone since your wife always helped you?" He then said, "I'm not blind. I was acting because if she knew I could see her skin condition, it would have pained her even more than the disease. So I pretended to be blind to keep her happy."
The harshest punishments for the smallest crimes, Part 1. After the death of Kimber Reynolds in 1992, her father was mad that one of the men involved in her death, who was also a lifelong criminal, was only sentenced to 9 years in prison. So he decided to help the state of California create a 3-strike rule, meaning the second time someone goes to prison, they're sentenced to 2 times the amount of years as their first time in prison. And if they go to prison for a 3rd time, then they're sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. This is to try and stop criminals from committing more crimes. But in 1995, Jerry Williams was sentenced to life in prison because he had previous convictions. And what he did this time was steal a piece of pizza from a kid at the beach. This is the longest whip ever crafted.
The power of time. This is what the barber's floor looks like after walking around the chair every day. This guy had his wallet for so long that his driver license photo imprinted on the plastic. Here's a comparison of the right-handed people and the left-handed people at a school. Here's what 14 years of this cat scratching looks like. This guy's shoe shows the bones in his feet from moving around weight with his foot. The glass globe of this light focused the sunlight enough to burn the sun's path in the grass. The paint on this vehicle wore out because it's the dog's favorite spot. Now before I show you the craziest one, I found this app that lets you remove anything from your photos. Just click the link in the comments to get it. This wall broke, exposing years of layers of paint. The reason there's UFO sightings in Area 51. In the 1950s, US planes were doing low-flying recon missions over Russia. They did these missions to obtain more information because they were enemies, but they were constantly worried about being spotted and shot down. So in 1954, the president authorized the development of a high-flying top-secret aircraft. They needed a location that wasn't easily accessed by the public, so they chose Area 51. In 1955, there were spottings of UFOs in that area, and this is because they were testing the new aircraft that they built. It could fly higher than 60,000 feet in the air, and at the time, normal aircrafts could only fly 10,000 to 20,000 feet in the air. So when pilots would spot this top-secret aircraft above them, they would think it's a UFO. The scariest coincidences caught on camera. In Pennsylvania, a body was found by the police in a river while reporters surrounded the area trying to figure out what was happening. One of the reporters interviewed a man named Matthew that lived by the area. When she asked him about the situation, he seemed really surprised and said that he had no idea what had happened. He said it was sad and a good place to hide a body. A few hours later, the police discovered that the body was Matthew's mother. He was later arrested arrested after the police found out that he was in possession of the same tarp that the body was wrapped up in. He was then sentenced to 14 years in prison. The event that started World War I was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand from Austria, which took place when he was being driven away in a limousine. The most disturbing coincidence was the license plate. The license plate number was A111118, which could also be read as November 11th, 1918, which is the date that World War I was agreed on. The voices behind 3 of the most popular cartoons. SpongeBob SquarePants made Nickelodeon $12 billion. The voice actor for SpongeBob is Tom Kenny, who also voiced the mayor in Powerpuff Girls, Dog and Cat Dog, Spyro the Dragon, the Ice King from Adventure Time, and more. Patrick is played by William Mart Fagerbacke, who is in the sitcom Coach, and also How I Met Your Mother. In the movie Moana, Ollie E. Crivello said she wasn't gonna audition because she's seen so many good auditions on YouTube. Then someone finally convinced her. She was the last to audition and she got the part. Maui is played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He said he based the part on his father because Maui was very similar to him. Finally, in Guardians of the Galaxy, Rocket Raccoon is voiced by Academy Award winner Bradley Cooper. And his sidekick Groot is voiced by Vin Diesel from the Fast and Furious series. This 6-year-old boy became the youngest soldier in World War II. Sergei Aleshkov, a 6-year-old boy, was orphaned during World War II after German troops arrived and killed everyone in his village, including his mother and brother. Sergei managed to escape with the help of a neighbor and quickly ran into the forest. After a few days, he was found by Soviet scouts who took him to a shelter led by Major Kozelski. Kozelski decided to leave him with the battle troops, and he was soon adopted by Mikhail Vorobyov, who didn't want to send him to an orphanage. Sergei didn't take part in combat operations. Instead, he had tasks like delivering letters and newspapers. He also brought the soldiers whatever they needed, including water, ammo, and grenades. But one of the times he went to deliver the newspaper, he saw suspicious people in a haystack and informed the artillery commander. The people turned out to be German spies who were then neutralized. After the war, Vorobyov raised Sergei, who later got married, had 2 children, and passed away in 1990.
5 rare phobias you've never heard of, part 2. Xanthophobia is a fear of the color yellow, meaning people with this phobia are scared of things like bananas and school buses. Aerophobia is a fear of fresh air or a breeze. This phobia is a common symptom if you have rabies. Amathophobia is a fear of dust. Research found that this fear occasionally shows up in librarians. Somnophobia is the fear of initiating sleep. It's most common in people who experience sleep paralysis. Deipnophobia is the fear of eating with others. This can come from a fear of criticizing what other people think of you eating, or the fear of having to talk to other people while you're eating. 5 more moments of instant karma. This drive-thru employee isn't putting up with a customer's prank.
You're not getting your drink.
This pedestrian makes rude gestures towards the driver and forgets to look where he's going. Before this man can have his fit of road rage, the other driver informs him that his car is rolling away. This motorcyclist drives around with raw eggs in case he runs into any drivers like this person. After these kids took an entire bowl of Halloween candy, the owners of the house tracked them down and made them return it. Five times people got caught in the act. When this man was checking his suitcase before a flight, he caught an employee leaning on the scale to add extra weight so she could charge him an additional fee.
Oh, she's leaning on it. She's giving me the extra LD. There we go. Oh, look at her trying to get me charged.
Someone at a baseball game caught this little girl sticking her fingers in someone's drink. This lady took an innocent video of her parents cooking together when she catches her dad drop a piece of meat onto the ground, then pick it up and put it back into the pan.
Hey, I saw that. I saw you put the...
Someone caught this delivery guy taking bits of food from customers' orders and packing them into his own container for later. And finally, this guy gets busted trying to refill his 2-liter bottle of Coke at a soda fountain. People who used money to get away with murder. Ethan Couch was 16 years old when he was arrested for drunk driving and killing 4 people. His millionaire parents hired a lawyer who argued that Ethan suffered from something called affluenza, a made-up condition in which someone is so rich that they don't understand the consequences of reality. Ethan served no jail time and was sentenced to 10 years probation, but he was later arrested for violating his probation when he fled to Mexico. Nevada is infested with cannibalistic crickets. The town of Elko, Nevada was taken over by millions of Mormon crickets. The crickets first appeared a few weeks ago and within days had taken over large parts of the community. They were blanketing roads, covering buildings, and even getting into people's houses. And to make things worse, when the crickets are crushed, they release a terrible smell which is equivalent to burning flesh. The number of crickets that were on the roads made it dangerous to drive and forced the city to use snow plows to clear them off. The crickets infest crops and eat everything in their path, including each other. Fortunately, the swarm should die off by the end of summer. 5 insanely lucky moments in sports. In the final seconds of this high school basketball game, a player throws up a wild full court shot and manages to make it to win the game. Next up, this baton handoff should have been a disaster, but because of a few lucky bounces, the runners were able to save it. During a college football game, this pass should have easily been intercepted, but luckily for Auburn, 2 players from the other team collided, and the ball flew right into the arms of the receiver to complete the touchdown. After an incredible volley, it seems like Roger Federer is about to lose the point, but he's somehow able to make an incredible return between his legs. Okay, this one might not be lucky, this one might just be skill. And finally, Russell Westbrook is out of control as he dribbles towards the net. Not only does he draw a foul, he tosses up a Hail Mary that rolls off the backboard, hits the rim, then bounces in. 5 rare phobias you've never heard of. Plutophobia is fear of money. People with this condition are afraid of handling, making, and being around money. Some people might even sabotage their own careers to avoid making money. Omphalophobia is fear of belly buttons. In an extreme case, one person with this phobia became physically sick from just the sight of a belly button. Decidophobia is exactly what it sounds like, a fear of making decisions. Dextrophobia is the fear of having objects on the right side of your body. This can also include the fear of being right-handed. And lastly, there's phobophobia, which is, you guessed it, the fear of phobias. Hundreds of pounds of pasta were found dumped in the woods. This man was recently taking a walk in his neighborhood in Old Bridge, New Jersey, when he came across something unusual. Someone had dumped a massive amount of pasta in the woods. Literal mounds of spaghetti, elbow macaroni, and ziti. The pasta was uncooked, but rainwater had softened the noodles, making them appear to be cooked. It took 15 wheelbarrows to remove the estimated 500 pounds of pasta. The mystery of who dumped it and why remains a mystery, but some people in the community believe it was a resident attempting to clean out his deceased mother's house. Have you ever wondered why mosquitoes are attracted to some people over others? Well, studies show that 20% of people are more attractive to them. But why? Well, bites mainly come from female mosquitoes who need the protein in human bloods to produce eggs. And it turns out that certain blood types are more desirable. Asian tiger mosquitoes are more attracted to type O blood, and marsh mosquitoes are more attracted to type AB. They can sense what blood type you are before they even bite you. Mosquitoes are also attracted to body heat and sweat, so they're more likely to bite you while you're out exercising or if it's a really hot day. They also tend to gravitate towards people wearing darker colors. Some studies actually showed that mosquitoes might be more attracted to people who drink beer, but the reason hasn't yet been determined. Here are some of the most popular snacks in different countries. Argentina is the world's #1 consumer of alfajores, which are sandwich cookies stuffed with dulce de leche and dipped in chocolate. Honey butter chips were so popular when they first released in Korea in 2014 that they sold out everywhere in just a matter of months and inspired competitors to make similar flavors. In Africa, people snack on bitlong, which is a salted and cured meat like jerky but way easier to chew. Bomba is a puffed corn peanut butter snack that's popular in Israel. Stroop waffles are thin waffle cookies with a caramel filling first sold in the Netherlands but now sold all over the world. And finally, Tim Tams are a biscuit cookie and staple in Australia. It even inspired the creation of the Tim Tam Slam, where you bite the corners of the cookie, then use it as a straw to drink a hot cup of tea, then finish it off by eating the melted cookie. 5 of the most expensive flops in movie history. The movie Ali was a huge success and even earned Will Smith his first Oscar nomination, but it underperformed at the box office and lost $21.3 million. Despite becoming an internet phenomenon, the movie adaptation of the musical Cats ended up losing $24.5 million. Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within is a 2001 movie based on the video game series. It ended up losing almost $52 million. The 2010 romantic comedy called How Do You Know, starring Reese Witherspoon and Paul Rudd, had a huge budget and also disappointing box office sales, leading to a loss of over $70 million. And finally, the 2020 live-action remake of Mulan was never in theaters, but was still reported to have lost $141 million.
3 places you should never swim. One of the rivers that you should never set foot in is Bubbly Creek, located in Chicago. In the 1900s, American meatpacking companies drained their waste into this creek, which caused really toxic fumes due to the decomposition of animal organs and blood. Not even a fish could survive in this creek. In Thailand, there's one area that causes concern called the Sa Mason Hole. It's a really deep underwater cave, which causes bad visibility for whoever swims there. So unless you want to get lost in the sea, I don't recommend swimming there. The last place is called the Amazon Basin in South America. It's drained by the Amazon River and has lots of predatory animals, like caimans, barracudas, piranhas, and deadly candiru fish, which is attracted by urine and can get into your urinary tract and cause a lot of pain. One day, a teacher named Nancy noticed a student wasn't acting like he normally did, so she decided to ask him if everything was okay. He started talking about his father, and what he said broke his teacher's heart. His father, named Daryl Peterson, was very ill. Both of his kidneys were only working at 20%, and he needed a transplant as soon as possible. The reason the boy was sad is because he never knew when it would be the last time he seen his father. His teacher felt terrible that this was happening to one of her students, so she decided to phone his dad. She wanted to help the family, and not just by doing something like offering to take care of his kid, but she offered him one of her kidneys. It turned out that the two were compatible and they went through with the transplant. Now Nancy isn't just his teacher, but also his hero.
5 pictures you need to see at least once in your life. First off, we have a sheep that hasn't been sheared in 6 years. Next up, this is how babies get x-rays. This was all the germs on an 8-year-old boy's hand after playing outside. This is what a turtle looks like when it's coming out of hibernation. And finally, this is what the sunset looks like from above the clouds.
5 photos you'll have to look at twice. At first, it looks like one of the thumbs from Spy Kids, but it's actually just a sausage hanging from string in front of a man. At first, it looks like this bartender's wearing a dress, but it's actually just a giant mirror on the counter showing the customer. At first, it looks like this rock is floating in the air, but it's actually in water and the sky's just reflecting off of it. At first, it looks like this guy's a giant on the beach, but he's actually just balancing on a tightrope. Now, before I show you the craziest one, I found this app that makes your Snapchat score look like this and your Snap score look like this. Just press the link in the comments to get it. Finally, at first, this just looks like a brick wall, but if you look close enough in the middle, you can see a cigar. Now, comment below if you've seen the Star Wars character that I hid in the video.
5 random acts of vandalism that's actually genius. This pole looks like a cow is being picked up by a UFO. Someone turned this thing on the ground into a light switch. This person drew a stickman painting over the graffiti removal number. This building had some fire burns on it, so someone drew a dragon beside it. And finally, this person drew someone picking berries from a plant.
5 reasons why people think the first moon landing was fake. If Neil Armstrong was the first person on the moon, then who took the picture? Here's a picture of Neil Armstrong's boots on display, and here's a picture of his footprint on the moon. They also wonder how the flag is up if there's no wind on the moon. They think the picture was taken in a studio because there's no stars in the sky. And because he's in a shadow but he's all lit up, people think they used a studio light to take the picture. Fake beggars who got caught. A man in Colombia pretended to have a leg injury so people would give him money. He collected about $200 from people driving by, but one day the police offered to help him with medical equipment, but he refused. So they looked into it and it turns out he was lying. A beggar in China pretended to have 2 legs amputated. He moved around in this little vehicle where he crawled with his hands. But one day a man took off his pants to expose him, and it turned out he had both legs. 5 years ago, a pregnant woman from America who begged for money every day on the streets with her child was caught after someone taking a picture of her driving a Mercedes-Benz, and while she counted the money with a smile on her face.
This farmer found a possible alien egg, but then a scientist tells him the truth. On one Christmas day, Jose left his house to go on a morning walk. As he walked alongside a river, something strange caught his eye. On the edge of the river, surrounded by water and mud, was a huge gray object that looked like an egg. He rushed home to tell his family what he had found, and his wife laughed because she didn't believe him. He went back to show her, and even dug out the mud around it to see how big it actually was, and it ended up being over 3 feet long. He told the public about this, and everyone started creating rumors about what it was. But after a lot of research from scientists, they discovered that it was actually a shell. 15,000 years ago, glyptodons roamed the earth, and after the scientists did some studies on the shell, they came to the conclusion that that's what it was from.
Genius inventions that should exist everywhere. In Poland, this bike path was made using thousands of tiny luminophores, which is a material that produces low levels of light for 10 hours, then recharges itself from the sun. The bike path doesn't require electricity and provides safety for people biking at night. 20 different cities in France have already implemented implemented this. It allows you to charge your phone by using pedal power. The goal of the company is to promote an active lifestyle while making sure your phone doesn't die. People who use the bike also get free Wi-Fi. The Cal Maritime Police Department in California has placed a safe zone outside which is watched by a camera 24/7. They made this zone so you don't have to worry about getting hurt or robbed while purchasing things from people in your city.
Here's famous magic tricks revealed. You may have saw this clip from America's Got Talent where the man named Smoothini pours salt into his hand, then it disappears and reappears. Here's the clip.
Whoa.
Good.
He even did it with whatever was in one of the judge's glasses.
Thank you. Not my name, though. That is the name.
But do you notice how not much reappeared back into the glass? That's because he uses a fake thumb. What he does is he has the fake thumb closed in his fist, then he pours the salt into it. He then secretly puts the thumb onto his other hand while he distracts the judges. Then you could see him in slow motion take the thumb off back into his closed fist, where he then pours it back out again, and same with the drink.
Gross habits that are actually good for you. Burping after you eat a meal is actually good for your stomach because it helps relieve it of air. When you bite your nails, you consume some of the bacteria that's on them. This makes your immune system start producing white blood cells, which helps fight bacteria. Studies showed that kids who suck on their thumbs or bite their nails are less likely to suffer from allergies. Taking showers washes away your essential oils, which are necessary to protect and hydrate your skin. So it's healthy if you skip showers every once in a while. Hidden secrets in everyday items that you didn't know about. Have you ever wondered why doorknobs are made out of brass or some sort of alloy metal? This is because those materials help prevent bacteria from spreading. If you take the lid off your cup and place it underneath, it fits perfectly as a coaster. Have you ever wondered why there's a hole in plane windows? The hole is in the middle pane of the 3 window panes. It takes off pressure from the outer pane so the window doesn't break. Gas pump hoses are attached by magnets, so if you forget to take out the hose, the pump won't go with you. The number on the side of lotion tells you how long the product will last so you don't damage your skin. The different colors on the bottom of toothpaste tubes actually mean something. Blue means it's made with natural resources and medicine. Green means it's only made with natural resources. Red means it's made with natural resources and some chemical compositions. And black means it's made with pure chemicals. Homeowners who spent a fortune just for revenge. A couple that was in the process of a divorce in the 1920s made an agreement where the husband had to build a house for her that was identical to the house they were living in, but she didn't specify the place where she wanted it. So the man had it built in a saltwater marsh that was in the middle of nowhere. In a Seattle neighborhood, neighbors got into an argument about a small plot of land. The owner of the land was approached by his neighbor, who offered him a small amount of money for the land so he could grow a garden. For some reason, the landowner was so offended that he built a house. In the end, the neighbor moved because the house obstructed his view. In Argentina, Karina Cavana was rejected from her partner's mother, so in revenge, she set out to build a house that would obstruct the view of the Basilica of the Blessed Sacrament from the home of the family that rejected her. Homeless people who won the lottery. Laszlo Andrzejczyk was an alcoholic from Hungary who lost everything. He was homeless for 7 years with hundreds of unpaid debts, but his luck changed when he bought a lottery ticket for just a few pennies. He won 636 million Hungarian guilders, which is equivalent to $2.5 million. A man living in his car from England bought a lottery ticket with his last few pennies. He put the ticket away, and 6 months after he bought it, he found out that he had won £250,000. A homeless man who lived in a tent won $50,000 after buying a ticket. Even though he could have bought a small house to live in, he chose to upgrade his tent and help his homeless friends by giving them each $100.
Have you ever wondered why people take ice baths? Well, here's why. Ice baths, or cold plunges, have become a lot more popular lately, and I've even started taking them. Lots of athletes have started doing them because when you get in cold water, your blood vessels get smaller. Then when you get out of the water, due to the temperature change, your blood vessels quickly reopen, which flushes your muscle metabolic waste products. And in regular terms, that means it speeds up muscle recovery from workouts. A study from 2016 showed that people who took cold showers were 30% less likely to call in sick to work, which means it helps support your immune system to fight off colds. There's a bunch more things that it does, like increase your blood circulation, but my favorite is it increases your dopamine levels by 250%. And for those of you that don't know what dopamine is, that's the hormone that makes you feel good.
Here's why the queen always carries her purse. Inside the bag she carries a mirror, a pen, lipstick, a few mints, and her reading glasses. But on Sundays she also carries money for church donations. However, she mainly uses it as an indicator for her staff. When the queen shifts her purse from one hand to the other, it means she's ready to finish that conversation. If the queen puts her purse on the dinner table, it means she wants the event to be over within the next 5 minutes. When the queen puts her purse on the floor, it means she's finding no pleasure in the conversation and would like someone to help her out. And finally, when the queen twists her ring, it means she needs to be rescued immediately. This man thought he was using a rock as a doorstop, but you won't believe what it actually is. In 1988, David Musrick was looking for a farm to buy. He found one that interested him, so he went to take a look at it. As the property owner gave him a tour, out of everything in the house, he was most intrigued by a rock that was being used as a door stopper. The owner said that one night when he was a kid, he saw it fall from the sky. So in the morning, him and his dad went to get it. But there's no proof, so he just had to go with what the owner said. He decided to buy the property and kept using it as a door stopper. His kids even brought it to school for show and tell. But in 2018, lots of people found small meteorites in their backyard of Michigan, and they were turning them in for a lot of money. So David thought about how much he could get for his big one, but he didn't know if it was real or not. So he found someone to examine it, and they found out that it contained 88% iron, but also 12% nickel, which is mostly found in meteorites. It turned out to be the 6th largest meteorite in Michigan, but he still hasn't decided whether he wants to sell it or not. He was bullied and called Rabbit Boy, but a few years later he shocked everyone. When Evan Hill was growing up, he was bullied and teased for his large teeth, and an overbite so big that he couldn't close his mouth all the way or speak properly. Orthodontist Rob Sloiter described his teeth as the worst case he's seen in 25 years. The teeth were so massive that it would cost around $12,000 to fix. But Evan's family was in a financial rut because an earthquake had recently damaged their house, and they even lost their car, which they used to take him to dentist appointments. But the way they ended up earning the money to pay for it will shock you. Before I tell you, I've been playing this super fun game where you cut down wood to build your town, then defend it from enemies. Just press the link in the comments to get it. Evan was invited on a news show in New Zealand, and after sharing his story with thousands of people watching from home, people from all across the country started fundraising campaigns and donated to him. Part of the money was even used to buy the family a new car, and the leftover money went towards other kids who needed dental work. Here's what Evan looks like now. Her dad passed away, and 4 years later she received a text message from his number. In 2015, when Chastity was new to college, her father got into a car crash. He apparently crashed into a tree while going 90 miles per hour. Right after impact, the car's engine flew out of the car and landed on him, and he unfortunately didn't survive. His daughter was heartbroken and used to call his number for months, but then she started texting him about her day and other things. And just a few days before he had been passed away for 4 years, she received the reply. It said, "Hi sweetheart, I'm not Jason, but I've been getting all of your messages for the past 4 years." He said that every morning he looked forward to her messages and nightly updates. The 50-year-old man named Brad said that he had lost his daughter in a car crash, and when he started receiving her messages, he called her his angel. He said that he wished his daughter grew up to be like her, and that her dad would be proud.
Here's what would happen if all humans disappeared. First off, all planes, ships, and vehicles would crash because there would be no drivers. Just a few hours later, lights all around the world would start to shut off because there would be no one to burn fossil fuels, which are used to create electricity. After a few weeks, pets and farm animals would start to die from dehydration and starvation. After a month, the nuclear power plants would start to explode because there's no one to monitor them. After 1 year, everything that we put up into the orbit like satellites would start to fall down. 15 years later, 75% of cities would be covered in grass, plants, and trees. 300 years later, towers like the Eiffel Tower would start to fall over due to no maintenance. And finally, after 10,000 years, the only evidence of humans would be stone buildings. Here's how to survive a brake failure. Imagine the light turns from green to red, so you hit the brake, but nothing happens. The first thing you'll want to do is put on your hazard lights, then honk your horn to alert others. Now you'll want to start zigzagging on the road to try and slow down. If there's shrubs on the side of the road, then drive over them because it'll slow you down as well. If there's a guardrail, then you could drive against it because your life is more important than your vehicle. Then pull your e-brake. It won't have enough power to stop you, but it'll slow you down. If you're in a manual car, then start downshifting because the engine will slow you down. If you're in an automatic, most of them have a manual option that you could put it in to do this. And lastly, look for a hill or an upward slope that you could go up to bring you to a stop. Here's how a heart transplant surgery actually works. As you would expect, heart transplant surgeries are very complicated and there's no room for mistake. It usually takes around 4 to 6 hours to complete. At the start of the surgery, the donor's heart is placed into a cardiac arrest with the help of an injectable solution. This way it makes sure that they could remove the heart cleanly. They then place it into a solution to preserve it. Once this is completed, the race against the clock begins. Due to the lack of oxygen, the heart will begin to suffer damage and will only remain usable for transplantation for a few hours. So it must get to the patient quickly. The surgeon then makes a cut in the middle of the patient's chest where they can then separate the ribs, exposing the heart. They also have to use a machine to maintain blood flow throughout the body during the procedure. Lastly, after the old heart is removed, they put the new one in place and join every artery and blood vessel so there's no leaks. Once this is done, they shut off the machine so the heart can start pumping blood throughout the whole body.
Here's how they did the biggest bank heist in the world. 25 robbers started by renting a property about a block away from a central bank in Brazil. Then they started digging a tunnel to the basement of the bank. They knew there would be a lot of dirt, so they faked being a landscaping company money by putting up signs, renting a van with an ad on it, and even introducing their business to the neighbors. They then dug a 260-foot tunnel to the bank that even had air conditioning and lights. When they got there, they broke through a vault that had 70 million American dollars. They brought it back to the rental property, then transported it away in getaway cars. The next day, one of them decided to buy 10 cars with cash, which set off an obvious alarm, so the owner called the police and he was arrested. He ended up telling the police a few people's names who were involved, and they were arrested too. But in the end, the police only retrieved $8 million, and some of them are still on the loose.
Here's how to survive a cone snail attack. First off, don't collect shells that stand out too much. The shell design of a cone snail sticks out way more to try and get people to pick it up, so they can then be attacked with its venomous sting. Make sure to wear protective footwear if you're walking along shallow parts of the tropical waters, because the cone snail often hides in the sand by the shore, then sneaks up on you and attacks you when you're not expecting it. If you're walking in the water, pay attention to what you feel, because the snail is capable of releasing insulin-based toxins, which when you're close by to it, it reduces your blood sugar level. This will make you feel dizzy, so if you're dizzy, get out of the water because you're about to be stung. Now, if you've been stung, stay calm and don't panic. When you get nervous, your blood flow will increase, spraying the venom across your whole body a lot faster. Keep pressure on the area to slow down the spread and head to the hospital as soon as possible. If you've been stung and you're nowhere close to a hospital, take advantage of every second, because there's no antidote for its venom, and it causes respiratory problems and muscle spasms due to the pain.
If you see a cookie under your doormat, call the police immediately. When a burglar finds a house to target, they start by watching the owner to find out information about the routine to figure out the best time to enter the house. One of the tactics they use to gather information is so simple you wouldn't think twice about it. But next time you hear a crunch under your shoe while entering your house, stop and check what it is, because if it's a cookie, you're in trouble. This is a tactic burglars use to see if you're gone on a trip or what time you come home every day. Since it's a cookie, people usually don't think too much about it and may even think it's a leaf or a bug. But if the burglar checks on the cookie and it hasn't been broken in a couple days, then they know you're gone on a trip and will break into your house.
Is it dangerous to tickle a stingray? You've most likely seen this viral video before of a man tickling a stingray, and it appears like the stingray likes it since he's laughing at it, but here's what an expert had to say.
It is not safe for the animal at all because of the fact they're animals that belong in the water. They breathe in the water. If you have them on land for too long, they're going to have issues that are based off oxygen depravity.
This lady was walking her dog when all of a sudden, a gator attacked her. The 85-year-old's neighbor immediately called the police when she saw this, and here's the conversation.
She was walking her little dog, and the gator grabbed the dog and took her. Fell down. Is she alive? Yes, she's alive. He's pulled her in. He's pulled her in the lake. Too late. It's too late. Oh my God! Did you pull her under? Yes. Oh no! I was trying to stick a pole out for her, and I was calling you at the same time, and she's gone. Okay. She's gone.
This lady gets caught shoplifting, then what the officer does will shock you. On a cold winter day, an officer was called to a Walgreens for a report of a shoplifting. The worker said she seen her take her things from her basket, then stuff them into her jacket. But when the officer questioned her, she said she had nothing in her jacket. She said she put everything back because she was supposed to be meeting her boyfriend there, but he never showed up. The officer asked her if he were to search her jacket if he would find anything, and she still said no. He gave her one more chance to come clean and take anything out. The worker even said that if she came clean, they wouldn't press charges and only give her a no trespass. She thought about it for a few seconds and finally pulled out a hat and gloves. When the officer was taking her information and asked for her address, she said she was homeless, and that since it was cold, she just wanted a hat and gloves. The officer told her to never do it again and that there were other ways than stealing, but decided to buy her the hat and gloves in the end so she wouldn't be cold.
This lady sees a crying man forced to throw a package in the trash. One day, Evelise Hernandez was getting dropped off at the airport in Florida by her boyfriend. He decided to wait with her until she got through security, but they noticed the man in front of them was taking longer than usual. The security wasn't letting the man take one of his bags through. The couple couldn't see what was in the bag, but they figured it was something important because he was almost in tears. The security also wouldn't let him put it in the lost and found. They made him put the bag in the trash. Since Evelise's boyfriend wasn't going through security, he went to the trash can and got the bag. Inside was a snow globe with a little girl on it and a couple on the other side. Evelise posted about this on Facebook and it went viral. The shop that sold the snow globe saw the post and reached out to her with the name of the person who bought it. In the end, they were able to meet up with the person that bought it and return it to her. A bank accidentally deposited $37 million into this lady's bank account, and you won't believe what she did with it. One day, a lady named Ruth went online to look at her bank account and she noticed a bunch of money that wasn't hers. She then tried calling the bank to figure out how the money got there and who it belonged to, but they were closed. She then screenshotted her bank account and sent the pictures to her husband to see if he knew what was going on, but he had no clue. So the next day when the bank was open, she called again and they said that they made an error. So she got in her vehicle, drove to the bank, and gave back every single dollar that wasn't hers. Good thing that it was an honest person, because if it was someone else, they may not have returned it.
Movie mistakes that made the final cut. In Star Wars Return of the Jedi, the Ewoks are bowing down to see 3PO. In one clip they show a close-up of an Ewok's face, and if you look closely you could see a missing eye. If you look through the hole you could see the actor's face. During Rey and BB-8's first encounter, she noticed his antenna was bent and decided to help him out. When she took out the antenna to fix it, the top of BB-8 is a metallic gray color. But when she goes to put the antenna back on, his head changes to white. In the Black Panther, Shuri designed him an upgraded suit with a special pair of shoes called sneakers. They had this name because they absorbed sound so he could walk around quietly. It allowed the Black Panther to sneak behind his enemies without them hearing him. But later in the movie when he runs and jumps, the sound editors forgot to leave out the footsteps. Normal looking photos with disturbing backstories. This looks like a normal picture at first, but if you look on the left you can see a hand around the girl that doesn't belong to any one of them. People believe this is the hand of a ghost because the picture was taken near a haunted house. This picture was taken in 1998, a few minutes before the red vehicle on the right had a bomb explode inside of it. Luckily the father and son survived, but the person taking the picture didn't. In 1975, these two brothers took a picture because their hair was sticking up. A few seconds later, lightning struck and another hiker died. The boys survived, but one of them got third-degree burns and later took his life. One in a million coincidences. These two trucks lined up and said Taylor Swift. This guy took off the mask and looks more like Mario than Mario does himself. The mountains on the truck lined up perfectly with the mountains in real life. These two ladies were dressed up almost the exact same and they're doing the same thing. This news reporter looks the exact same as the robber that's on the loose.
This man takes home a rock found on the beach until scientists discover what it actually is. Gary and Angela Williams are a British couple who like to walk on the beach and look for unusual objects. On one of their walks, they smelled something stinky, so they went over to see what it was. They found some sort of sticky gray stone. Although they didn't know exactly what it was, they figured it could be something important. They thought it might be an ambergris, which is something that's produced in the intestines of whales when things that couldn't be ingested clump up and harden over time. Ambergris can take years to form and is very rare. It's really valuable in the perfume industry and can cost $70,000 because over time it develops a sweet scent that's used in expensive perfumes. The couple looked for help to discover what they actually found, and scientists in France and New Zealand both confirmed that it actually was an ambergris. However, the value of it is still unknown because more studies had to be done to figure out how old it is. This old lady fell while delivering pizza, and you won't believe what happened to her. The lady is a 72-year-old great-grandmother who works at Domino's, and one day while she was delivering pizza, she fell. The homeowner rushed outside to make sure she was okay, but the only thing she was worried about was that she damaged their food.
Sorry.
Are you hurt?
I ruined your food.
The lady used to work at a school as a lunch lady, but she took the job at Domino's Pizza because she needed the money. The homeowners felt terrible that she was working at the age that she is, and not because she wanted to, but because she had to. So they posted the video of her falling onto Facebook along with a link to a GoFundMe page. Just the next day, they went to Domino's and found her working there and told her that they made a GoFundMe page for her. Then they revealed that it made $235,000 and she was able to retire.
People who got stuck in the strangest places. Jamie Bracken Murphy was a young Irish boy who got stuck in a stuffed animal vending machine. He wanted to grab one of the toys, so he went in the machine, but couldn't get out. Thankfully, it was easy for them to get him out, and he was only in there for a couple minutes. A man named Cato Larson got stuck in a toilet while trying to get his friend's phone out. He didn't just reach his hand in, he went all the way in the toilet and he couldn't get out. He couldn't find his phone either to call for help. He stayed there for an hour until he was freed by firefighters, who had to break the toilet to get him out. Finally, a woman named Rosie decided to get into a washing machine for a TikTok. But her legs got stuck, so she had to call someone for help to get her out. She tried calling her friends first, but they couldn't, so she ended up having to get help from the fire department.
People who got what they deserved. This lady got pulled over for no real reason, and you can see her take off her seatbelt when she's in park because it's a habit. But when she asked the officer why she was pulled over, he said because she wasn't wearing her seatbelt. Luckily, she had a dash cam recording her, and the officer was proven wrong in court. On all Rolls Royces, they have an ornament on the front, and when you lock the car, it hides away so no one steals it. But when the owner of this Rolls Royce saw people sitting on his car, he decided to unlock the vehicle, which makes the ornament go out. And finally, when it was time for this person to pay at a phone repair shop, she tried to run out without paying, but luckily, the worker has a button behind the counter which locks the door, so she was trapped inside. Normal looking photos with disturbing backstories. One morning in 1954, a photographer for the Los Angeles Times named John Gaunt was in the front yard of his beachfront home when he heard a neighbor yelling that there's something happening on the beach. He thought it would be something interesting for the newspaper, so he grabbed his camera and took this photo. But unfortunately, it turned out that this couple's 19-month-old son, who was playing in their front yard, wandered off into the beach, then vanished into the water where they never found him. When you first look at this photo, it just looks like a normal high school picture. But if you look in the top left corner, you can see a man named Eric Harris and his friends pointing pretend guns at the camera. Just a few weeks after this photo was taken, Eric and one of his friends shot 12 students and 1 teacher. This photo was taken at a nightclub, but shortly after it caught on fire from fireworks and 100 people passed away.
One in a million coincidences. This bird landed on the page about itself. This guy's t-shirt, race number, and finishing time were all the same number. A dog gave birth to these 3 puppies, each with their own corresponding number on their back. These 2 strangers sat next to each other at a bar and spelled Cookie Monster. And this person managed to take a picture at the exact same time as the balloon was popping. 3 people who beat the system part 2. A man from Turkey was banned from his hometown soccer stadium for a year, but he said there was a match that was really important. So he had to go to the police station to sign a paper to show that he wouldn't be allowed to watch the game in the stadium. Then right after, he quickly went to rent a crane. It only cost him $86 and he even led the crowd in a chant. A girl's phone was about to die, so she yelled at her mom upstairs to bring her down a charger. The mom decided to put the charger around the dog and told her daughter to call the dog downstairs. Now before I tell you about the smartest kid, I found this app that lets you prank your friends and family by changing their text messages. Just press the link in the comments to get it. Finally, this girl was playing on the computer and didn't want her mom to shut it off. So she placed Legos all over the floor because we all know that it's the most painful thing in the world.
People who embarrassingly expose themselves. James Hydra claimed he had psychic powers and could control things with his mind. But one day, James Bondy, who made a career out of exposing magic tricks, asked him to prove that he was actually psychic, and if he could, he would give him $10,000. James Hydrick agreed, so the other James placed packing peanuts around the book, so he could catch him if he was just blowing the paper, and here's what happened. He claimed that he couldn't do the trick because the packing peanuts and the studio lights were causing an interference with his powers.
5 people who beat the system part 4. This guy had to send in a picture of him in a suit and tie to his work, but he doesn't own one, so he photoshopped his face on somebody else's. A mayor in Brazil prohibited bar owners from setting tables on the sidewalk, so their solution was to put them on the back of a truck. At a camp, all the kids had to write a letter home before they ate. So this kid just wrote, "I was forced to write this to eat." The students in this class had to pick a Marvel character, then write a resume and cover letter pretending to be them. So this student chose to do Groot, and since the only thing he says is "I am Groot," that's what he put for everything. Before I show you the smartest kid, I found an app that lets you prank your friends and family by changing their text messages. Just press the link in the comments to get it. This boy's mom put a lock on the drawer, so when he's misbehaving, she puts his electronics in it. But she never knew that the boy could take out the top drawer to get to the bottom one.
People who did crazy things to avoid being caught. Frank Abagnale Jr. was a con artist and imposter who managed to avoid the law for many years by pretending to be various professionals, including a pilot, a doctor, and a lawyer. He even managed to pass an exam and become an attorney for a little while before he got caught. His story was later turned into a movie and is called Catch Me If You Can. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was a Mexican drug lord who managed to avoid being caught by using tunnels and secret passageways to avoid detection. He was eventually caught and is currently serving life in prison. Finally, Edward Snowden was a former National Security Agency contractor who leaked classified information about the agency's surveillance activities. To avoid prosecution, he fled to Russia where he was granted protection. He currently lives in Moscow, but he remains a controversial person. person.
People who gained real-life superpowers after an accident. Jason Padgett was a party animal who wasn't interested in mathematics at all. But one day at a party, he was hit in the head so hard that he got a concussion. The concussion caused him to become a mathematical genius. It made him learn fractal geometry, which he had never been taught before. When Derek Amato was 39 years old, he hit his head after diving into the swimming pool and was diagnosed with a concussion and 35% hearing loss. After that, Derek began to see black and white keys in his head, and out of nowhere, he began to play the piano like an expert. Ben McMahon was in a car accident in 2015 and fell into a coma for a week. When he woke up, he could speak perfect Chinese, even though he had only learned the basics as a child. Tony Caesarea was struck by lightning after making a call in a phone booth. Within a couple days, he was addicted to music, which he wasn't before. After trying a piano, he became a musical artist composing his own music. Prisoners who escaped prison and were never found. Clarence Anglin, John Anglin, and Frank Morris are the only 3 prisoners who managed to escape Alcatraz prison in 1962. Because the prison is on an island, they probably died in the icy waters of San Francisco, but their bodies were never found. Sharon Kin murdered 3 people and was sentenced to life imprisonment in the 1960s. After 13 years in a Mexican prison, she managed to escape thanks to a blackout. To this day, her arrest warrant is one of the longest in US history. John Patrick Hannon and Gwyneth Thomas escaped from the Verne prison in England. They used several knotted sheets to climb over a wall, and within a few hours, Thomas was captured. But Hannon has been free for 66 years and is considered one of the most successful escapees. Real-life glitches caught on camera. A guy pulled out a camera to take a picture of a bird when he seen this helicopter taking off. The helicopter starts flying, but the propellers aren't even moving. A dad was recording his son while he was looking in the mirror. The boy turned around to look at the camera, but his reflection in the mirror didn't follow his actions. In 1995, when Mike Tyson was boxing, there was somebody in the crowd recording on a phone. But the thing is, phones with cameras didn't come out until 5 years after this fight. And finally, these people were having a street race on the highway. As soon as the cars passed, you could see a dog in the middle of the highway. It would have been impossible to miss it, so it had to have teleported.
These parents had no hope left for their injured boy, but then a miracle happened. A 6-year-old boy named Caleb got into an accident which left him with brain injuries and fractured ribs. After the doctors saw his test results, they had no hope left. This is when the doctors suggested therapy. His parents were confused on how therapy would work if the medical treatments failed. But since they had no other option, they decided to give it a try. When the therapy began, a dog named Colonel walked in and they made him sit beside the boy. And as soon as this happened, his brain activity resumed and his body functions began to improve. After the first session, the doctors noticed major improvements, so they kept having more sessions. The reason the boy was improving is because he wanted to pet the dog, so he was making the effort to move his body. To this day, the doctors believe that the dog gave him the boost he needed to be able to survive and walk again.
Places on Earth that no human has set foot on. This place is the Island of Snakes. It's in Brazil and is only visited by Brazilian military and some scientific researchers. You're not allowed to go there because there's 1 to 5 snakes everywhere you step. And the golden snake, which is one of the most dangerous snakes in the world, lives there. Grankar Punsum is a mountain located in the Kingdom of Bhutan. It's over 7,000 meters in the air and has never been touched by a human and never will. Because in 1994, climbing over 6,000 meters in the air was prohibited for religious reasons. And lastly, North Sentinel Island. The Indian government banned any contact with the island because of the aggressiveness from the people that live there. Recently, 2 fishermen decided to explore the island and they were killed by the people that live there.
Here's random acts of kindness that will make your day. This man had cancer, so his barber decided to do this. The man driving this truck used his lift to help the lady get to her car without stepping in the puddle. This guy on a motorcycle noticed a cat in the middle of the road, so he turned around and stopped the traffic to save it. And finally, this guy on a scooter stopped the traffic so this lady could cross the road safely. Random acts of kindness that will make your day. When this delivery driver was dropping off a package, he hid it. But he also noticed that there was another package at the door that wasn't hidden, so he hid it. To avoid anyone from seeing it, then stealing it. When this guy was walking on the sidewalk, he saw a child hanging from a balcony. So he risked his life to climb up 4 stories to save the baby. Finally, this lady was struggling financially, so she had to sell the ring that her mother gave her. But the worker noticed how much the ring meant to her, so he decided to give her the money but also let her keep the ring, and here was her reaction.
This robber showed up to the bank he robbed during a live broadcast. In Minnesota, a man was reporting about a bank being robbed the day before, when an employee ran out of the building behind him and pointed to something in the distance.
Tyler, just 24 hours ago, this bank in North... That guy right there. What? That's the robber. Oh, that's the robber. This is live TV, folks. That's the robber. Just went by, according to the bank employee. So I gotta go here and call 911. I'll talk to you later.
The bank employee ran after him, but he jumped into a van. But because of this, the police were able to track him down and arrest him. It turns out he had robbed the same bank 2 days in a row.
Scientists finally discovered the truth about Easter Island. Easter Island, also known as Rapa Nui, has always been pretty cool and a big mystery because of the giant rock statues. It is said that the statues represent guardian protectors for the people that live on the island. This small island is only 100 kilometers long and has 887 statues on it. It was once believed that these statues were only heads because that's all that you could see above the ground. But in 2012, they did a bunch of digging and they discovered that they all had full bodies that were hidden underground. But the biggest mystery is how did they get there? Because they've been there for hundreds of years, but the thing is, hundreds of years ago, they didn't really have the technology to be able to carry something that heavy. For example, the largest one that was discovered is 10 meters high and it weighs 90 tons. But the way that they got there is that they were carved with volcanic ash. Simple psychological tricks that actually work. When you're asking someone a question and you want the answer to be yes, then nod your head back and forth while you're asking the question. This trick is used by restaurant employees to make you buy more food. If someone's talking on the phone and you want to give them something or take something from them, instead of interrupting them or waiting until they finish their call, just stick out your hand and they'll give you whatever they have. Or if it's the other way around, just give them whatever it is and chances are they'll take it because they're busy on the phone and won't think twice about it. When you're negotiating a price for something, for example buying a vehicle, if they give you an offer that you like, then act disappointed and they'll be more willing to give you a better offer. Finally, when you wake up to your alarm in the morning, immediately sit up, then pump your fist in the air and yell, "Yeah!" I know it sounds funny, but it makes it easier to get out of bed and feel refreshed. Give it a try tomorrow and let me know how it works. This man's soda tasted weird, so he looked inside and you won't believe what was in it. All the way back in 2009, Fred and his wife were sitting down to have dinner one night. He decided to have a Pepsi to drink, but when he took a sip of it, he didn't feel very good. He never tasted a Pepsi that had tasted like that before, so he wondered what was inside of it. His wife asked him what it tasted like, but he couldn't find the words to describe it. They decided to pour it out and discovered that inside was a dead frog. They immediately phoned poison control, but luckily, Fred was completely fine. Because Pepsi is so acidic that any poisonous bacteria from the frog wouldn't have been able to survive.
Here's the 3 most dangerous kid toys. In the 1990s, Rollerblade Barbie was released. Each rollerblade used the same wheel mechanism they use in cigarette lighters. So when the Barbie was rolled, they would shoot out sparks. In 1996, the Cabbage Patch Snack Time Kid was released. It ate plastic foods that came with it and exited through a hole in the backpack. But the toy couldn't tell whether it was plastic, your finger, or your hair. And one girl's hair was ripped down to her scalp. Finally, in the 1990s, Nickelodeon released Moon Shoes, which you would strap onto your feet and the springs would help you jump higher. However, they weren't very safe and lots of people sprained and broke their ankles. Sneaky ways airports get you to spend more money. The first thing they do is put the parking ticket at a high price. It's cheaper if you park at a nearby hotel or get a ride by a bus or cab. They also ask you to arrive early to avoid missing your flight. So after checking in and going through security, you'll feel relieved and ready to wait for boarding. And you'll also have plenty of free time to shop. Airports take advantage of this by placing lots of stores in your way, like coffee shops, convenience stores, and restaurants. Most commonly, more stores will be on your right, because most people are right-handed and they tend to look that way more often. Finally, you'll find eye-catching and spacious stores to attract your attention, so you can walk right through with your luggage, while restaurants and cafes will have a quiet atmosphere to make you feel more comfortable and spend more money.
This teacher stopped for a boy riding his bike in the middle of the highway, which ended up saving his dad's life. One day, Keller Sutherland was driving home from work when she seen a boy biking in and out of traffic on the highway. She was worried for the boy, so she turned around and went to talk to him. When she rolled down her window, she realized that she knew the boy. It was 7-year-old Cameron Simoncic, who was a former student of hers. The boy rushed over to her and burst out in tears. Then she told him to get in the car and explain why he was upset. Cameron said that when he got home from school, he saw his dad lying on the ground unconscious. He tried calling 911, but he couldn't get on his dad's phone because he didn't know the password. So he went to his neighbor's house, but they weren't home. The only other thing he could think of was to bike to his grandma's house. But luckily the teacher found him, then dialed 911 and gave the phone to him so he could tell the police where to go. Apparently Cameron's father is diabetic. As soon as Cameron and the teacher arrived back at his house, the paramedics were there giving insulin to his dad. Around 30 minutes later, he was feeling better, and it was all because of the teacher.
The coolest houses in the world. The safe house is the only home in the world designed for a zombie apocalypse. When you flip the switch, the mechanical concrete walls and steel doors shut, making it impossible to get in. It even has a drawbridge to get to the pool so you don't have to go downstairs. This house has 3 floors with built-in slides. One side of the house has stairs to get to each floor, but on the other side there's a slide that you could ride all the way down to the first floor. The house also has a built-in ball pit. Finally, there's 130 of these floating houses being built in Dubai. The bedroom is on the lowest floor, making it fully underwater. There's huge windows that overlook the coral reef. And on the top floor there's a bar and hot tub. The 3 weirdest restaurants in the world. Cafe Econ is a 3-story restaurant. The first floor is normal, but the second and third floor are filled with ankle-deep water and swimming fish. One floor has smaller fish than the other, so you could choose which one you'd like. Guests have to take off their shoes before entering. In the restaurant called Modern Toilet, the chairs are replaced with toilets and the food is shaped like this. An example of a meal you could order is called a turd sub sandwich. This restaurant is prison themed. Guests are brought to their table by a prison guard. Each table is in a different cell blocked off by big black bars. The prison guards carry fake guns, and there's also fake guns on the walls and ceiling. The school bus that mysteriously disappeared. In 1976 in Chowchilla, California, 26 children between the ages of 5 and 14 were on their way home on the school bus when they were kidnapped along with the driver. Frederick Newhall Woods and brothers James and Richard Schoenfeld came up with an evil plan because they didn't have much money. The school bus left at the same usual time, but on the way, a van pulled up in front of them, and inside were the 3 men with masks and guns. Once they got control of the bus, they drove for about 12 hours to a quarry 100 miles from Chowchilla. When they arrived, the kidnappers took out the hostages one by one and told them to climb down a ladder that apparently led to a buried trailer. They didn't have good ventilation, so they were suffocating. And after 16 hours, the bus driver and the older boys piled up mattresses to get to the only place out, then moved a metal lid the kidnappers had placed and dug to the surface, managing to get out from underground. When they got to the surface, the 3 men were sleeping, so it was an easy escape. And 2 weeks after the kidnapping, the 3 men were arrested. The 3 most terrifying places to swim. This pool in China has machinery made to create waves, but in 2019 it malfunctioned and made a bigger wave than the pool was designed for. It sent people flying in the air and landing on tiles. 44 people were injured, but there was luckily no deaths. This place in Hawaii called the Pool of Death is a place to swim made out of volcanic rocks. The water is clear and the perfect temperature for swimming, but at any time waves from the ocean can throw people against the rocks and pull them underwater, which has caused many deaths. This popular tourist spot called Devil's Pool is the deadliest place to swim on Earth. Against the waterfall's edge, it's surrounded by rocks, making it the perfect place to swim and take pictures. But one wrong move and you'll fall to your death. Here's the dark theory about Bikini Bottom. The Reddit user Capmaster pointed out that Bikini Bottom is named like that because it's directly under Bikini Atoll, which is where they did nuclear testing from 1946 to 1958. And because of this, the creatures that were living in that area have mutated, and that's why they can talk. Another Reddit user said that chipmunks were among the animals kept on the Navy ship during these tests, and that's why Sandy wears a full protection suit and turns into a strong creature during hibernation. Here's the dark theory about Timmy Turner. In the show, when kids turn 13, they lose their fairy godparents. So fans believe right before he turned 13, he wished to be a ghost, which turned his whole world into the show Danny Phantom. This is why Timmy looks like Danny, Chester looks like Dash, AJ looks like Tucker, and Trixie looks like Paulina. The 5 worst advertising fails. Snow White is on this package for apples, but I don't know if I'd trust them because in the movie she got poisoned by one. On the box for Connect 4, it shows that it includes blue discs to block your opponent. And it shows the red player using one when they could have just won. On this ad for this massager, it shows that you could use it anywhere, including in the office, at home, and I guess even while you're driving with your eyes closed. This store was having a sale on computers, but apparently these PCs won't last long. But what they were really trying to say is that they'll sell out fast. Now before I show you the worst one, I found this app that tells you your celebrity lookalike, and apparently I look like Robert Downey Jr. Just click the link in the comments to try it and let me know who you get. Finally, on this ad for unbreakable wine glasses, it shows a kid holding one. This is the creepiest McDonald's in the world. In 1986, this McDonald's opened for the World Expo in Canada. Because of its location and cool features, it was placed ahead of the competition. It had real plants, wooden floors, and art covering the walls. Instead of you being able to see the kitchen like in regular McDonald's, the creators hid it. And to get the food to customers, they placed it on a conveyor belt. Millions of people from around the world ate there because it was a must-see tourist attraction. At the end of the expo, it was closed and abandoned for years. Now it looks like this. Here's the dumbest things bought by billionaires. Saudi Prince Amir bought a Mercedes covered in 300,000 diamonds. It took 13 experts 2 weeks to attach them, and it cost $4.8 million. Data Fugue bought a shirt made entirely out of gold. It has over 14,000 pieces of 22 karat gold weighing 7 pounds, and it cost him $250,000. Finally, Kanye West spent just under $1 million on 4 gold-plated toilets for his mansion. The funniest ways people got revenge. When Mark's laptop was stolen from him, he hacked into it from his house and found an embarrassing video of the thief dancing in front of the camera. He then uploaded it to YouTube where it went viral and the thief saw it. So he returned the laptop begging for Mark to take the video down, but he didn't. When a girl found out her boyfriend had cheated on her, she asked him to get matching tattoos as a symbol of love, which he agreed to. But she left him without getting hers, leaving him with a tattoo to remind him of her. This guy was just doing his job painting over some graffiti, but I guess the people who painted it weren't too happy with him. They got revenge by painting him on the wall where he had just covered up. The happiest prisoner on death row. Joe Arity was born in 1915 in Colorado. He eventually entered the state training and home school for the mentally handicapped at the age of 10. At the age of 21, he left school and boarded a freight car, and ended up in Wyoming. At the same time, the police were on the lookout for a person guilty of murder and attempted murder on the 2 sisters, Dorothy and Barbara Drain. While Joe was wandering around, he was stopped by the sheriff George Carroll, who thought he was a suspect in the crime. After questioning him, the sheriff said he confessed to the crimes and was arrested. Then Frank Aguilar, who worked for the Drain family, confessed to the crime. Barbara, who was the survivor of the attack, confirmed that it was Frank and said that she had never seen Joe. Joe's lawyer tried to obtain a plea of insanity because 3 psychiatrists said that he had an IQ of 46 and the mind of a 6-year-old. Despite this, Joe was wrongfully sentenced to death, and everyone who saw him in jail said that he kept smiling. On the day of his execution, he still couldn't understand what was going on and still had a smile on his face as he entered the gas chamber.
The funniest 911 calls made by kids. 6-year-old Robbie Richardson wants to be a police officer when he grows up. One day, he was riding in the car with his dad when they went through a red light. He thought the right thing to do was call 911, so he did. They were on their way to a car wash when his dad turned right on a red light, which is illegal in Massachusetts. He told his dad he was gonna call the cops, but his dad didn't think he was serious, so he didn't worry about it. When they got home, they were all outside cooking on the grill when Robbie went inside to call 911. 5 minutes later, he came back outside and told his dad someone was on the phone, and this is what happened.
Somebody just called.
Hey. Hello?
Hi, Quincy Police.
Oh, no. I'm just going to apologize.
This is the luckiest person alive. Bill Morgan was declared dead for 14 minutes, but he somehow survived. And to celebrate his survival, he bought a scratch ticket and he won a $27,000 car. A news channel later asked him to reenact scratching the card on camera. So he bought another one and ended up winning the $250,000 jackpot.
3 places you're not allowed to visit. In Atlanta, Georgia, they made this vault to hide the recipe for Coca-Cola. And legend has it that only 2 or 3 employees actually know the ingredients. The people who live on North Sentinel Island are known for firing flaming arrows and throwing rocks at tourists. So the government decided it's off limits. This vault in Norway holds thousands of seeds for every plant on Earth, which could restore the Earth if there was ever a disaster that wiped out all of our natural resources.
The most bizarre coincidence in history. A few years ago, a man named Paul was paying for some groceries when he noticed something strange. One of his bills had the name Esther on it, which is the name of his girlfriend. So he decided not to pay with it and put it back in his pocket. Later that night, he wrapped up the bill to give it to his girlfriend as a joke. The next week, they went on a date and he gave it to her, and when she opened it, she was shocked. She quickly put it away and Paul was confused, but he let it slide. 2 years later, Paul and Esther got married. Then one day, when they were packing up to move into their new place, Paul saw the bill and decided to ask her about it. It turns out it was her who wrote her name on the bill before paying with it, hoping that one day the bill would return to her, and if it did, that would be the person who she marries. Since they had only been dating for a few weeks when she was given the bill, she didn't want to tell Paul the story in case it scared him away. The most funny Photoshop fails. This guy asked the editor if he could make the city more in focus. So he did make it more in focus, but he also blurred out the man. This lady asked if he could remove the railing. So he did, but he replaced it with a watering can. This guy asked if he could get his hand removed from his girlfriend's hip because he thought it looked funny. But instead of removing it, he added in another person. This girl said she loves the picture, but she's wondering if he could add some more green. So he did add some more green. And finally, this guy said he wore the wrong color tie and was wondering if he could make it black. So he just swapped the colors of the tuxedo and the tie.
The most insane things found in abandoned millionaires' mansions. In 2018, a student went to visit his grandmother's abandoned mansion and decided to check in the garage. He found 2 supercars, a 1981 Lamborghini Countach and a red Ferrari 308. The 2 cars have a combined value of around $450,000. In 2020, Toronto police raided a giant mansion, but the owners had abandoned it because what they were doing inside was illegal. The owners were from the Canadian Mafia, where they had a bunch of illegal gambling games. The police found large amounts of cash, a restaurant with illegal food foods such as shark fins, and a bar estimated to be around $1.5 million because of the expensive bottles. Finally, a YouTuber named It's Me Antho went exploring an abandoned criminal mansion, and it was obvious the owners left in a hurry because there were still dishes in the sink and lots of clutter. He ended up finding bullets and a Fiat sports car in the garage. Theme park rides that had to be shut down. On this roller coaster called the Dragon Challenge, located at Universal Studios Islands of Adventure, there were 2 tracks that at one point were very close together. Several riders got hurt over the years, so they destroyed it and closed it in 2017. The most serious injury on that ride was someone who lost their eye. On the catapult ride in Mount Olympus Water and Theme Park, you went up so fast in such a short amount of time that many people fainted. In 2015, when a child and woman were getting ready to take off, one of the cables snapped, so they closed the ride 2 days later. And finally, Son of the Beast is the world's tallest and fastest wooden roller coaster. It was closed in 2009 because 27 people had to go to the hospital for neck and chest injuries due to a broken beam. It later reopened, but head trauma was reported because of the violent motion from the roller coaster, so it was then shut down for good. 3 bizarre things found in pools. A lady was going down to the pool for a morning aerobics class when she seen a 5-foot crocodile in the pool. She phoned the rangers to come get it, and when they took it out, they noticed it had no markings on it, so it must have been a wild croc. In California, the police were chasing a car, but it was driving so crazy that they had to stop following it for safety reasons. The car was later found in someone's pool, but the driver was nowhere to be seen, so they think he ran away to avoid the charges. And lastly, one morning a family woke up to a hippo in their pool. The water went from crystal clear and clean to dark green and dirty. The father's a safari director, so he's used to seeing animals like that. They said the hippo stayed there for 10 days before it finally left.
The most genius design ideas. This lamppost holds up an umbrella for people sitting on the bench when it's raining. This cat bed is shaped as honey spilling out of a jar. This sidewalk had a crack in the cement, so someone filled it with a glass portrait. This doctor has an IV bag full of water to water the plant. Here's what the doorknob looks like at this person's butcher. This wet floor sign is shaped as a banana peel. Now before I show you the best one, I found this app that lets you live stream without any requirements like a certain amount of followers. If you want to try it out and meet some new friends, just press the link in the comments. Finally, this sponge holder is shaped like SpongeBob.
The Power of Time Part 2. This guy's mom gave him and his brother the exact same teddy bear when they were born, but you could tell which one had more love. These indents in the carpet are from this person's cat walking the exact same path every single day. These 3 knives have been used so much at this person's work that they're almost gone. This is someone's carpet after moving their bed for the first time in 60 years. Here's this person's sun damage after being a delivery truck driver for 28 years. Here's what the floor of a bank looks like after years of people standing in the same spot. Now before I show you the craziest one, I found this app that lets you create your own fonts to use as your keyboard. Just press the link in the comments to get it. Here's the difference in stairs built in 1829 versus 2005.
The most heartwarming judge verdicts. This family was in court for supposedly going 35 miles per hour in a 20 zone, and this is what they had to say.
Well, I didn't feel like we were, exceeding too much over the limit.
Not too much.
No,
just a little.
Yeah, just a little. I didn't.
No, she.
Now we found the honest one.
Then the judge brought up their son and asked him if his dad was speeding or not.
Guilty or not guilty? What do you say?
Guilty.
Guilty.
But in the end, the judge ended up letting the ticket go. As soon as the judge read why this lady got a ticket, he started laughing. She got a parking ticket for parking in a zone that you can only park in past 10 a.m. And guess what time she parked there at?
I think 9:59 is close enough to 10. Matter is dismissed.
Thank you. The most respectful moments in sports. After winning the match, his opponent was left injured, so he helped them get off the mat. After a basketball game, Steph Curry signed the shoes that he was wearing, then gave them to a fan in the audience, and here was their reaction. During a post-match interview, a fan ran into the field, so the security took him away. But the player felt bad, so he ran over to him to take a picture with him. The place where murder is legal. The specific area is in Yellowstone National Park. Unlike any other district, the District of Wyoming includes land from other states. So if someone was caught for murder in that area, they would be brought to Cheyenne, which is the main court in Wyoming, because the crime technically happened in Wyoming. But in the United States Constitution, it says, the trial shall be held in the state where the crime was committed. So if they invoke their rights to having a trial in Idaho, it will force the court to bring them back there. But it also says that the jury who gives a verdict in a case based on the evidence has to be from the same state and district of where the crime was committed. But the thing is, no one lives lives there. The strangest last meal requests on death row. In 1963, Victor Harry Fager was sentenced to death for a kidnap and murder. For his final meal, he requested a single olive with the seed left in it. After his execution, the seed was found in his pocket. They believe he wanted to be buried with it so a tree would sprout on top of him. Gerald Lee Mitchell requested an assorted bag of Jolly Ranchers and he ate every single one. In 1990, James Edward Smith requested a lump of soil, but because dirt isn't on the list of permitted food, he was served a cup of yogurt instead. Thomas Grasso was convicted of robbery and murder. He requested a bunch of things like a cheeseburger from Burger King, 2 strawberry milkshakes, but the thing he wanted the most was SpaghettiOs, which he didn't receive. Instead, he got spaghetti which was supposedly too warm. His last words before dying were, "I did not get my SpaghettiOs, I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this."
These customers bought out a donut store so the owner can take care of his sick wife. This is what the store looked like at 5 in the morning. The line was already going out the door. All of the customers are there to show their support by buying as many donuts as they can so the owner can leave early to take care of his wife who's recovering from a brain aneurysm.
I bought 3 dozen. Yeah, I came in the other day and bought 300.
When this lady named Jonah got there, all of the donuts were sold out and it was only 7 in the morning. But instead of being mad, she was really happy. Because growing up, she also had a family business. So she was happy that people were there to show support for a local business. The strangest trapdoors ever found. Martin Zero, who's an expert at Manchester's hidden architecture, discovered that under the city was Tib River. It was used during the construction of the city to transport things more easily. But it was later blocked off and replaced with a canal that runs through the city. The trapdoor is now over 200 years old and acts as a drain for water, which falls 20 feet before hitting the Tib River. A user on Reddit shared a story of what he discovered at his school. As a punishment, him and his classmate had to clean the school gym, which is when they discovered a mysterious looking panel underneath the stage. When they entered it, they discovered another trapdoor that led to a room full of water. After they told the teachers and they investigated it, they found out that it was an old basement used for shelter in case there was a storm. But the creepy thing is, the teachers went down there with flashlights and discovered a bunker full of creepy wooden dolls. The strangest last meal requests on death row. Philip Workman's final request was to get a large vegetarian pizza delivered to a homeless person. But the prison denied doing that, so he ate nothing. On the day of his death, many people from around the world donated pizza to homeless shelters. David Leon Woods was on death row for 22 years before he was put to death. For his last meal, he chose a pizza and a birthday cake, which he shared with his family. But the strangest part is, his birthday wasn't for another 3 months after his death. John Wayne Gacy, otherwise known as the killer clown named Pogo, ate 12 fried shrimp, a bucket of KFC chicken, French fries, and a pound of strawberries.
Things your parents told you that are actually false. Number 1, carrots help you see in the dark. Carrots are full of vitamin A, which helps maintain eyesight but won't give you night vision. Number 2, Fruit Loops have different flavors based on their color, but in reality, all Fruit Loops taste the same. Number 3, dropping a penny from the Empire State Building can kill someone that's standing below, but a penny can't get that much speed to do that. Number 4, all chocolate is bad for your health, but dark chocolate in small amounts can be beneficial for your health. Number 5, oranges are always orange. Some oranges stay green to protect them from the sun. Number 6, the humps on camels store water. What they actually do is store fat.
2 things you never realized you're doing wrong. If you've ever tried eating fast food while you're walking or in the vehicle, you know how hard it can be. Well, it turns out there's a right way to eat McDonald's when you're on the go with no table. First, you open your burger or nugget box and place it over your drink. Then dump all your fries onto the other side to balance it out. You may be thinking this is dumb and not the way, but McDonald's themselves posted this picture on Instagram showing that this is the ultimate meal hack. Now, have you ever hit your fingers while trying to put a nail in with a hammer? Well, lots of hammers have a slot on the top that you could place a nail in, so you don't have to hold the nail with your other hand when you make the first hit.